Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to day 2 of the first ever World Magic Cup here at Gen Con Indianapolis. Richard Hagan, Brian David Marshall, the Pro Tour historian, with you here, and we are getting ready for another tumultuous day here in the bear pit of team action. BDM, we had an amazing day yesterday. What would you take away from day 1?
My big takeaway from day 1 was that every match mattered.
Yes.
That we had, while we went from 4-player teams to 3-player teams today, and you throw away a score from the 4th player, every match mattered. We saw that 10 teams, only one of them was going to get in with a certain score, and that last match was crucial. Tiebreakers. People out on the floor today are talking about. They're like, oh, Mark Anderson, who he's the Canadian player whose score was tossed out.
Okay.
But they're like, oh, thank heavens you won that last match because we're an 8th seed and not 12th seed.
Sure.
And that was a big deal for the Canadian team.
Okay. Well, let's take a look at the format of the tournament as a whole. We started yesterday. Let's bring up some graphics for you to show how it all sort of fits together. And the national teams, they had a top pro from the last year and then 3 winners of World Magic Cup qualifiers. And then we began on day 1, rounds 1, 2, and 3, individual play, everyone playing just to add their own score. 1, 2, and 3, Magic 2013 booster draft. BDM, how was M13 draft yesterday morning?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting watching people draft. There's still a lot of I think unexplored room in there. There's definitely some disagreement over picks still. It's not as fully explored as say M12 was at this point, where people are like, I want the Bloodthirst deck.
Sure. All right.
So it was good.
So we started off with 3 rounds of limited. Then we moved to constructed. Let's take a look. Rounds 4, 5, 6, and 7. Still individual play.
Where's the Glistener Elf?
Oh.
Where's the Glistener Elf in that graphics package?
Well, I can tell you the answer to where's the Glistener Elf is in the Croatians deck.
4-0 with mono green, in fact. Cathedral of War, Wild Defiance. That was definitely the big story yesterday in Standard.
It absolutely was. And we talked in the weeks and months leading up to the event with teams, and we said, look, is there a plan for going rogue in some way, a kind of all-in package where you gamble, and if you gamble wrong, you're all going to sort of end up with a combined 2 and 14 record? You
know what, though? The Infect deck, as it turns out, I mean, I guess it was vaguely untested, in the sense that it was a last-minute audible by the Croatian team. But if you talk to them, it was not a gamble. They were like, look at this matchup, this matchup, this matchup, this matchup.
It was a correct metagame call.
There's no bad matchups for the Infect deck there. We think people are going to play this. We think people are going to play this. We think people are going to play this. And they're like, it doesn't lose to those decks, does it? And they're like, no. And they're like, and then that was theory. And then they put that into practice.
So they just backed their judgment, and it worked.
Yeah.
All right. So that was yesterday. That led us to 32 teams coming back. Let's take a look. And as we move on, you see they got 3 points for a win, 1 for a draw, none for a loss. They couldn't play against each other. The bottom line there, the top 32 teams advanced to day 2. That brings us to right here, right now. 3-person team play. And rounds 8 to 10, it's Magic 2013 team sealed. Right now, the 32 teams are building their 3 40-card decks, minimum, for M13 team sealed. And we're going to talk a lot about that because it's going to be an amazing morning, a format we don't get a lot of a chance to look at.
But I mean, this is a format that if you're going to Grand Prix San Jose in just really like what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. You really need to be paying attention to this. Maybe you want to even, I don't know, practice this. Team Sealed, that's going to be the day 1 format at Grand Prix San Jose. I mean, granted, it's going to be Return to Ravnica, which is, going to be, just turn it up to 11 from the 10 that this format is.
Sure.
But, Team Sealed is very exciting. It's interesting to watch. You can see the people who've built these decks before out on the floor and the people who've never built a deck before, just in terms of how they lay out their cards, how they sort of analyze, how they're sort of moving packages of cards around. It's fascinating.
So that's the first phase of day 2. Pools of 4 teams is what we'll have. and then the top 2 teams will advance. Then we get rounds 11 to 13. It's team constructed. 3 formats. You've got standard, you've got Innistrad, Avacyn, Restore, Block constructed, and you've got modern. And once again, BDM, it's pool play. 4 teams and 2 get to advance.
Yeah, you've seen The Dark Knight, right? Dark Knight, the second movie. You know, the scene where the Joker, breaks a pool cue in half and says we're holding tryouts. This is what pool play is like.
Right. Okay. Nice and polite and genteel.
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
No, not at all.
4 teams enter, 2 teams leave.
Yeah. And it's very important to stress that seeding is pretty important here, because if you're
crucial.
tied, seeding counts. If you're the number 1 seed, 2-1 will get you through. If you're the bottom seed, you need 3-0 to be safe.
So we had dinner last night next to the Malaysian team.
That's right.
And the Malaysian team was, they went, all 4 players on the Malaysian team went 4-3 yesterday.
Right.
They went 4-3 across the board. That 4-3 by the fourth player was the crucial difference to get them out of the pack of 36s into that 32nd spot. And they're asking about, pool play. There's like, here, Terry So of the Malaysian team, it's like, here's your bottom line. You need to go 3-0.
Absolutely.
If you go 3-0, the math goes out the window. You don't need to worry about any kind of finesse situations. You're in.
All right. If they are in, they go from 32 to 16 and 16 down to 8. Let's take a look at Sunday play. It's still 3-person team play, and you're going to see the bracket that you're used to. It's team constructed, still those 3 formats, the quarters, the semis, and the finals. And once again, what counts is that if you have the top seed, you will get to play first in all these matches, which, BDM, it's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen this just in individual top 8s at the Pro Tour. People really jockeying to get top seed in the Swiss rounds so that they get to go first throughout the top 8. So now, Matt, take that and treble it. All 3 players get to go first.
Yeah.
It's not best 3 out of 5. It's best 2 out of 3. It's going to be crucial to be. I guess there's some situation where you could draw, but the opportunity to be on the play in all 3 games, in all 3 matches is unbelievably powerful advantage going into Sunday.
Let's take a look at the 8 pools that are coming your way this morning in team sealed action. And we begin with pool 1. Let's head ourselves up. There you see the idea. Teams are ranked 1 to 32 by team points. Let's head on down, show you pool number 1. So pool number 1, there you have it. The number 1 seeds coming in are Croatia. They are the 3 leading Pro Point players of all time from that country. Gregor Petric-Maritic, you've got Tony Portolan and Stepan Sucic. They are your number 1 seed. They are joined by Ukraine, Singapore, and last night's dinner companions, Malaysia. And that looks like a pretty strong pool. I'm not sure it's the absolute pinnacle of the 8, as we'll see. But you would fancy your chances, if you were any of those sides, of advancing to the next stage.
And if I was any of the 3 top seeds, I'd be very concerned about the possibility of a Terry So team going 3-0.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at pool number 2. So we have our number 2 seed. All the pools are balanced. You see, you've got the 2 seed, the 15, the 18, and the 31. BDM, what a fantastic story, the 15 seeds Peru.
Oh, that was, very, very exciting. This is a team that did not field a full 4-person squad on Friday. They only had 3 players. That meant they had no net, right? There's no score that's going to get thrown out. All 3 players, whatever you put up, that's it. That's what we're going to use to determine your score. So, and they made it through with room to spare.
Yeah, Jimmy Sam was 6-1, and then both Sergio Sanabio and Gabriela Ruiz were 4-3, comfortably in. So congratulations to Peru.
Yeah, and we heard that there was they said on Twitter last night, a big magic party in Peru, a lot of national pride there at the success of this team.
Yeah, I mean, just if 4 of them had been there, you would have said, well done for making day 2. It's not a huge Magic Nation. For just 3 of them to make it in, that's one of the big stories from day 1. So that is pool number 2. They're surrounded by the poles. Let's take you to pool number 3 now, show you what we've got. Here we go, the home team, Team USA. And again, another hats off story here, BDM, because coming in, the story was the US have 2 stellar players and 2 unknowns. Can either Alex Pinnock or Joe Panacchio step up to the plate? Answer, yes, yes. 6-1 for Alex Pinnock, 6-1 for Joe Panacchio. Brilliant job.
On the other side of that, Luis Scott Vargas, kind of the wheels came off a little bit for him at this event, and as a result, he's going to be holding the clipboard today.
Which should scare a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw, you could see him just sort of like moving cards around at the team sealed portion and making a lot of decisions, and he's going to be, I was talking to Brian Kibler about this yesterday, as it became clear that the U.S. team was going to advance and that Luis Scott Vargas was not going to. And Brian Kibler said, it is not clear to me that this is worse for us than if Luis was playing.
No, I agree.
He's like, is Alex and Joe augmented by LSV's experience and ability to sort of process the game very quickly, better than either Alex or Joe on their own with LSV, playing one match? I'd argue, I think I'd rather just have LSV playing, but, he said it's not clear to him, so yeah. I'll respect that as a...
If we take another look at that pool 3, once again, the United States, you see that we have with them Estonia, Greece, oh hello, and Brazil, and that is going to be a monster match, United States against Brazil.
I think we're going to be starting off there today.
That would not surprise me at all. That sounds about right.
I'm saying I think they're headed for a round 1 collision.
Okay, let's take you to Pool 4 then. Who are the number 1 seeds here? It's the overall 4th seed, of course, and it is Taiwan, Chinese Taipei. They are joined by Portugal, Sweden, and Austria. And this, to me, we have a tradition in soccer, as you would call it, at all the big tournaments. It's the group of death. And this, my friend...
Is that indoor soccer?
Shush. And this is the group of death, because you could pick any 2 of these to advance, and just tough matches all the way around.
You really like the 4th seed in that pod. You really like Austria.
I really like Austria. I think Thomas Holzinger was someone who so impressed me at the last Pro Tour. Beating Paul Rietzl, that's a big deal to make it into the top 8. Right. Neck veins throbbing frantically as he tried to control the emotion. But he did control the emotion, made it in. A lot of time for him. Ben Leitner, young man, 15, 16. And then Gerald Leitzinger, sort of stalwart of the European Grand Prix circuit. I think they're going to do very well today.
I'm very high on the Swedish team there, with Dennis Rashid.
With good cause.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two Pro Tours in this year, top 8, both of them, obviously. As you do. We can dream.
Easy game.
Yeah. Let's move on to pool number 5, and let's see who we've got. It's Argentina who lead the way, and that's a surprise. I think that we haven't really given them a ton of credit. That is a terrific posit from day one for them. Norway, Finland, and Slovenia, so it's 3 European nations. Slovenia sneaking in the back door. Robin Dola and friends, Bojan Zunko, well done to them. I would think if you were any of these teams, you would look at some of the other pools and think, yeah, this is where we want to be. Really, and no disrespect to any of the teams in there, but you would think,
there's not a he top 8'd 2 Pro Tours in the last 6 months,
or they've won 74.
He's won a team sealed Pro Tour. He's done this. Yeah,
none of that.
There's not one person that leaps out there as like David. As Goliath to your David.
Yeah, and also, of course, as we head towards there, the points are much closer. You've got Argentina had 45 coming in, Norway 42, Finland, Slovenia 39, 38. So that's one where just anything could happen. Pool 6, this looks very good again. Let's look at 6. We have Scotland, well done to them. You've got Hungary, the 11th seed.
Hold on for a second.
What?
It's one thing for Scotland to be in Pool 6. But to be like the 6th seed overall at the end of day 1, I think that warrants taking a second and talking about the Scottish team. Who are these guys? Scotland is not a bastion of magic Pro Tour success.
No, sure. The thing is that it's basically the best players Scotland has to offer.
Okay.
If you had a national selection committee, you would basically end up at these 4, with maybe one exception. Maybe there's a super sub you'd pinch hit.
Sure.
But basically speaking, it is the best team Scotland has. And remember that for half of the lifetime of the Pro Tour, Scotland were part of Great Britain teams. So Stephen Murray, who is on this Scotland team,
okay,
he's played for the Great Britain team at Worlds before now. Back in, I think, 2008. I have a feeling that's right, Memphis. Yes, they're terrific. Andy Morrison, the team leader, is a tremendous competitor. He will make you beat him if he knows that he's at 1 and you hold 4 lightning bolts in hand. He
Sure.
will make you kill him.
He's not going to scoop.
He has never heard that word.
Okay.
You know, and he's draped in the flag. He really cares. They all do. Brad Barkley, Stephen Murray, Chris Davey, who just missed out coming in.
We saw kilts yesterday, right?
Yep, Stephen Murray, absolutely, in the sort of ceremonial dress.
And if I could, they were kicking non-kilted ass all day long.
Yeah, they did tremendously. I have a lot of time for Hungary in that pool as well, but then Spain and Switzerland, they're just great too, you know?
Yeah, Joel Calafell is someone who's had a lot of success and knows a thing or two about playing Magic.
Okay, let's move on to Pool 7. We've got the Philippines, we've got Uruguay, we've got Romania, and we've got the Netherlands. And I guess the big story here for you, BDM, would be Romania.
Yeah, you know, I was talking to Pavel Daru on the Romanian team yesterday.
That's who it was, right.
And, you know, he said, man, we really just want to make day 2. He's like, our team has never had success at world team competition, and we just want to show everyone at home that, you know, that we took this seriously, that we represented the country, that we did really well. And he said if we could make top 16, it would just be a dream.
Sure.
And I was just really touched by it, really super excited for them. And I know a number of people picked up their story, and there was like a little round of applause when they announced that they made it through to day 2. And I'm hoping that they have, you know, bigger and better in their immediate future.
That said, there is a scary prospect in that group, and that is the leader of Team Netherlands, that is Jelge Wiegersma, Dutch Hall of Famer. He's someone who has been around the Team Sealed block.
He won a Pro Tour. He won Pro Tour Seattle with Camille Cornelissen and Jeroen Remy as Team Von Dutch. I mean, he knows how to do this. He's done it. He was in New York for 2 Pro Tours. He was in Boston for 2 Team Pro Tours. He is probably the most experienced Team Pro Tour player in this room, you know, except for Aaron Forsyth. But beyond that.
Sure. Let us take you then to our final pool, and this features Canada, France, Puerto Rico, and Bolivia. Well done to Team Canada. They are geared up and ready to go. Lucas Xiao, Mark Anderson, of course you've got Alexander Hayne, Jamie Blanchette. France led by Rafael Levy. Well done to Puerto Rico and Bolivia. Again, 2 of the teams that would be hoping to make it into day 2.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that it's going to be a big deal for the Puerto Rican player base that that the team made it through. So that was very, very exciting. But Team Canada was really happy, like I said, to pull it. You know, like they were in the lead all day, and then they had a very bad individual final round.
Right.
Except for Mark Anderson, whose score was getting thrown out, winning, and that actually made the difference, and that sort of got them to be the top seed in their pool. And otherwise they wouldn't have been. And so they have a little bit more room to give as a result of being the 8th seed and not 9th or lower.
Okay, so those are the 8 pools. Now, they're going to play Team Sealed. We're going to widen the discussion because we're joined at the desk not only by the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall, but an array of talent from limited resources. It's Mr. Marshall Sutcliffe. And on the end, from inside research and development at Wizards of the Coast, it is Mr. Zach Hill. So, what we're going to do is we're going to ask the 3 guys in turn for some perspective on Team Sealed. We'll start with you, BDM, and just give us a little bit of a flavor of what is Team Sealed, the history of it, really.
Well, I mean, Team Sealed goes back to Pro Tour Washington, D.C.
Okay.
1999. That was the first Team Pro Tour, and you know it's day 1 is you know the Pro Tour was traditionally Team Sealed. Day 2 was Team Draft, but you know Team Sealed is get a pool of boosters, put them together, and build 3 decks and 3 sideboards, and that sounds very simple. But it's almost like a mini constructed format. You have so many packs, so many runs of commons, so many looks at uncommons and even rares that you see a lot of the more powerful cards. It's really hard to get a weak deck, so it really comes down to the deck building skill, the problem solving skill of usually one person who's really, taking the lead and filtering in the advice from the other people, and how these guys can work as a team. Because if everyone's going off and building their own deck and doing their own thing, everyone just starts to get greedy and hungry hippos, the cards all over the place, and so it's a challenging format that's a lot of fun and result in some kind of like steroidal sealed decks for play.
Let me just check one practical issue. You talk about the sideboards. Now that's split up between the players.
Every single card in the card pool has to be assigned to a player.
It belongs to a person.
It belongs to a player. I mean, there's always a joke, it'd be like one color you weren't playing, and everyone would just kind of shotgun to not have to register those cards.
All the blue cards. All right.
But actually, the sideboard's very important.
So where you put your naturalized effects.
Not even just where you put your naturalized, sometimes where you put that extra color. Sometimes you'd be like, oh, you're weak to this, so you have the Evolving Wilds, so you can actually take these 3 blue cards. And, you have the ability to swap in an island and bring in these cards in that matchup. And again, there's very much like, it's not necessarily like red-white or blue-green. It's kind of like, did you build an aggro deck? Did you build a mid-range deck? Did you build a control deck? And then what elements do you have in your sideboard when you face up against your worst matchup on that sort of dial of sealed deck?
Okay, let's turn to Marshall. Marshall, you exist in a world where you're always figuring stuff out.
Yes, I do.
That is what you do, and that is what you love.
Yeah.
So now, here, in the middle of a format, you would traditionally be working your way through all the M13 draft archetypes. Suddenly, here is a brand new format for you to figure stuff out in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are so many places you can go to. Like, when is a Windrake not a Windrake? It's like everything changes value. What's your take on Team Seal?
So what I've seen basically from so far is that these decks play what I would call above a draft deck. So I'm not even talking about a super sealed deck. I'm talking about like, it feels like it's borderline unconstructed. You have to build a deck. You cannot come in here and just put your best cards together that are in the like colors. That's something that happens a lot. A lot of times when you get your 6-packs, sometimes they're not the best, for an individual sealed. And what ends up happening is you take the best cards that you can fit that work together. You're happy to get some synergies going. You're pretty happy, if you can get that. These decks are not like that. These decks are decks with a plan. They have very specific roles to fill, and you will see stuff that you don't normally see in sealed getting play and not getting play.
You're going to see 4s and 5s of a common, right?
Yeah, we have seen that. We've seen a couple wandering around, so there's some stuff. And you and I, BDM, we opened up a pool and kind of went through it. This is 12 packs. We're talking about a lot of cards. It's daunting. Yeah. These guys sit down and it's like, we got to figure this out. And you got to make 3 decks out of the thing. We're not talking about making 1 sealed deck. We're talking about making 3, and you have to suit them to the players, right? Like, you can't just hand any guy on your team any deck. People are going to want to play a certain way. And so you're going to need to build the decks that suit them as well.
And you're going to bench cards that you've never benched in a draft deck.
It doesn't feel right. Like, it just doesn't feel right to do, but you have to do it.
You talk about every deck needing to have a plan, very definitely having a plan. To what extent do you think decks are going to be allowed to execute their plans? Is this a format where you're left in peace? I think of the intro decks, for example, from any core set. And part of the appeal for newer players about those is you can see what you're kind of meant to do. I'm meant to make lots of little guys and hit them with it. That's a kind of, back of the envelope plan.
Yeah.
And what's nice about those decks is that you get to do that because there aren't 4 copies of Pyroclasm in the other deck.
Right.
There aren't 4 Day of Judgment in the other deck.
Right.
You make creatures, they stay in play, apart from the one little Searing Spear that comes to take 1 away.
Sure.
Is this a format where, once you have the plan, you get to execute the plan in broad terms?
So I think the first thing is that these decks are laser focused. If they're not interrupted, they are going to execute their plan, and they will beat you very quickly or slowly. Whatever they want to do, they're going to do it. Now, I think the teams that are going to be the most rewarded here this weekend are the ones that figured out what the basic plans are. I'm talking about You know, are people beating down? Are people ramping? Are people playing control? Is Exalted an entire deck itself? These are the people that come here prepared to beat those decks, that build their decks with sideboard plans with those in mind, I think are going to be the one success. They're going to be one level ahead, because browsing the pools, opening a pool with you, I can see similarities. The colors sometimes change, but the types of decks are starting to emerge, and the ones that are aware of those and are aware of how to combat those are going to be rewarded here.
Okay, let's turn to Zach, and in some ways of the four of us, I'm guessing you might be simultaneously the most excited, but also the most scared. Because for those of you who don't know, Zach Hill is working inside R&D at the headquarters of Wizards of the Coast. When you create a new set, you are aiming at certain target audiences, if you will, and certain target formats. You are making sure that Standard is a good environment. You're looking to make sure that Draft is a good environment. You're not necessarily aiming to make sure that Team Sealed is a good environment. So, what are you looking forward to here, and what are you thinking? Please God, don't let a team turn up with 3 mono black decks that just all have twin Vampire Nighthawks. You know, what are you looking for this morning?
Well, definitely I want to avoid the situation that you just described. I'd be awkward for us all. You know, as the lead developer of M13, I'm obviously looking for it to be a really exciting, limited environment. I'm looking forward to seeing what different people do. The nice thing is that, you know, a team sealed pool is like having half a draft just for your own team. You know, you're opening 12 packs. So in that sense, I actually expect it to be, I expect a lot of these decks to be a lot like a booster draft, and I'd be surprised if they wind up very differently from that. What's different is, instead of having to see what cards come to you and kind of hope, you know, oh, I just took a Mind Sculpt here, I hope I get 5 more of these. You know, you're gonna see what you get on the front end, and you're able to adapt around that. So I think it's gonna approximate a lot of the sort of subtleties and synergies that we built into the draft environment, simply all on the front end for Seal.
Okay, you mentioned Mind Sculpt, so let's segue into archetypes. First question, is there a mill deck out there, realistically? Because one of the functions of draft is that you often only one person wants them. Yeah, he doesn't like this, but you know, Mind Sculpts are a card that go round a draft, and you pick them up, just like in other formats you have like a Tome Scours that go round, and one person gets them. But here, you've either got them or you haven't. Do you expect to see mill decks this morning?
Well, I certainly expect there to be viable mill decks. I mean, not only do you have Mind Sculpt, you get rares like Sands of Delirium that, again, you don't have to just sort of wait to see what comes around. You get to look at your pool, you get to say, okay, I can either support this or I can't, right? You've got Vedalken Entrancer, very powerful card, can, you know, mill away, it can win a game by itself. You've got Archaeomancer that can get back any number of those Mind Sculpts, assuming, you know, for each Archaeomancer, that's another 7 cards. So I certainly think it's, and if you're just the luckiest person in the room, you get Jace Memory Adept. So yeah, I certainly think it's an archetype that can be supported. And the nice thing is there's no way to crash and burn like you can in draft. You're not going to move in and fail. You're either going to see that you have it or you don't.
Right, it's, you talked about that idea of it being half a draft. It's like being in a draft and you sit there and you're like, if only I had known that this mill deck was going to be in the draft. If I'd known there were going to be 7 Mind Sculpts, I could have had an insane deck.
Exactly.
Right, but it's too late, and I'm out of sequence, the cards didn't come back around. You don't, that doesn't happen here, right? You know there's 5 Timber Pack Wolves, right?
Right, no one's going to hate draft you.
Right. Well, depends on your teammates.
Okay, so Marshall, we understand that you would rather gouge your eyeballs out with hot rusty spoons than play a mill deck in this format.
Than play a Mind Sculpt specifically.
Okay, so give me an archetype that you would love to be playing and piloting this morning.
Black-White Exalted. Like that's the first thing that comes to mind. It's one of the marquee formats, one of the marquee decks for this format. I'm sure Zach saw this one coming. You know, the Black-White Exalted is a thing. And you know, when you and I build our deck, BDM, we had to cut exalted creatures from our deck, and like almost every creature we had was exalted.
Yeah,
now that's something that I didn't expect.
Well, I mean, we cut a Griffin Protector.
Yeah, and a Griffin Protector as well, because like, that doesn't
How
say
is this
exalted.
possible?
Yeah.
Because why would we want a 6/7 flyer attacking?
Yeah. So what I think is going to happen is when it
Well, we
comes
had to make
the,
room for all the removal.
Yeah, it's true. We had 4 pacifism. You know, these decks are nuts. You have to we cut a pacifism from our deck.
Well, we didn't cut it. We
gave
put it
to
in a
another
different
one. Yeah, to be fair. But still, like, you know, you're not playing it. So what I think we're going to see is, again, that leveling. That deck is a known quantity. People are going to be expecting it. They're going to know it's here. If there's a way to combat it, and there are tools in the format. One of the things I love about M13, and this is a credit to Zach and the work he's done, is that there is a tool for everything. There's an answer to every question out there. Chandra's Fury, Cower and Fear, wrecks that deck. Just takes out half their creatures in one hit, and also sometimes even does a bunch of damage to them. I think that the teams that are prepared to see these decks that we come are going to be rewarded for it, and it's really hard to resist playing a deck as linear and powerful as the Exalted deck, for example.
Almost on the flip side of the Exalted deck, which is, yes, I've got a bunch of creatures, but I'm attacking with one of them, and that's what really counts. BDM, I know you're a big fan of a deck that has lots of creatures and attacks with all of them to the sound of trumpets.
Yeah, we've built a few decks in Team Sealed over the weekend, and the one that I think has been the most successful, and I played it against a lot of the decks we've built.
You smashed me with
is
it.
this red-white Trumpet Blast deck, I mean, where we had multiple Krenkos commands, multiple Captain's Calls, 3 Trumpet Blasts, 4 Attendant Knights, and you know the deck, and Searing Spears and Pacifisms, and you know you just set up and you're like, oh, and we had Odric too, but let's not talk about that. But that's the thing, is you do have these kind of build around me bombs that, you know, if you build it, you know, it's going to be, you're going to get to execute on this. It's not like sometimes you have Odric in a deck and you're like, oh, this card's awesome, and if I get to a situation where I have enough creatures, Odric's going to be awesome. This is a format where you get to like build your deck and go, I'm going to play Odric, and it is going to be amazing every single time I play it because my whole deck is built around him.
I mean, you could have taken Odric out of that deck, and it's still awesome.
Great.
Like, that's the beauty of that thing.
Yeah, it was really an almost all common stack.
Yeah, it really was, and it was very, very consistent. It was like, here, I'm going to make a bunch of tokens. I'm going to Trumpet Blast you. If you stop me, hey, fair game. If not, you're dead.
And here's the thing, it's early, so I don't remember it's a white card, +1/+1 to all your creatures.
Glorious Charge.
Glorious Charge, thank you. I had 2 of those in the sideboard of that deck. So if I'm playing against a deck that I think has Chandra's Fury or has Cower and Fear siding into it, I have this ability to switch out maybe my Trumpet Blasts for something that's a little slower but more controlling for my deck.
Because honestly, your tokens can just win, and if your opponent crafts their entire plan around, I'm going to get him with a Chandra's Fury, and you counter it with a Glorious Charge, like, the game's over.
Right.
Especially because they're going to wait till you attack a lot of the times. Oops.
I'd like to ask the 3 of you about a couple of groups of cards specifically. So, first question is, in general terms, when we talk about a card like Naturalize in most formats, you look at the artifacts and enchantments that you're not prepared to lose to, and if there are enough of those, then you say, I'm going to put the Naturalize into my main deck. Planeswalkers, though, we know in this format, because there's 3 decks to find, they always find a home. What are you looking to do, whether or not you've got any Planeswalkers, about the Planeswalkers that you're expecting to face this morning?
Well, so,
you
everyone looked at me.
Yeah.
I've got secret knowledge.
You made them, you answer them.
This is your fault, Zach.
Yeah.
I bet. It usually is. Well, I don't think it's accidental, right? Just hearing everybody talk about it. We've all talked about these powerful, aggressive strategies. And I think there's a reason for that. I mean, you know, everyone's going to have good cards. Everybody's going to have bombs. So if you know that, and you know that that's true of your opponent, whoever, you know, sometimes you can just kill them first before they're able to cast those. Obviously, more aggressive decks are more well-positioned against planeswalkers because they can attack them directly. Whereas the decks that we were talking about, you know, the Vedalken and Trancer deck that goes long, unless you happen to mill it away, like, your opponent's going to see their powerful cards. The slower you are, you know, if you try to build some sort of control deck that just gains card advantage, casts Divination a bunch of times, like, your opponents are going to have powerful cards, and they're going to see them unless you do something about it. So I think defaulting toward a more aggressive strategy can really help counteract that plan.
Punishes weak draws. It punishes people that keep sketchy hands. You know,
Sure.
it just when you're the aggressor, you have a lot of the advantage on your side to start.
I found the Tormented Soul has become a natural, like, he's got a lot of Planeswalker heads hanging on his belt. Like, you know, with Exalted, he's like,
Right.
get in for 4, kill your Planeswalker.
Yep. Yeah,
It's like another head on my belt.
Yeah, except for Chandra.
It sounds to me like, broadly speaking, all three of you are advocating an aggressive, proactive strategy, and that kind of, I mean, not all the time.
Yeah.
But that kind of leads to the next group of cards, which is a very broad group. It's called blue.
Yeah.
And one thing I've noticed from watching lots of people build is that you look at the blue, and cards that you would normally put in a blue draft deck in the blink of an eye, think, yep, that's perfectly serviceable, thank you, don't seem to quite make the cut here. And is that because, like what you're saying, Zach, about, yeah, Divination's a great card in draft, but maybe here, you're kind of, do I really want to be, when they've made Tormented Soul on turn 1, an Exalted Guy on turn 2, and a Cathedral of War and an Exalted Guy on turn 3, do I want my turn 3 to be Divination? It feels like blue is perhaps quite weak within this specific format.
Well, I certainly have seen that. I mean, you definitely open certain types of blue pools that are just weak because your cards don't do what you want them to do. I mean, that said, there's a corollary to that. I mean, while you may not have time to cast Divination, the reality is you're drawing better cards, right? I mean, if your deck is just on higher quality than average, those 2 cards are just more powerful on average than they would be in other decks. So I think if you can make them work, the payoff is there. I also think there is a Blue Skies type deck taking advantage of Welkin Turn and Windrake. They're not the cards that you're most excited to open in a regular draft, but if you have 3 Welkin Turns and some Exalted creatures, all of a sudden that deck can become very powerful and kill you very fast.
And of course, you've created a cycle of cards that demand color pairing. In the case there, it would be Arctic Haven.
Exactly.
Which is obviously a great
that
card in that
can
deck.
Literally win a game by itself. I mean, Vampire Nighthawk's been dominating games for a long time since it was first printed in Zendikar. Arctic Haven is even a bigger swing than that. So I feel like they're definitely, like, you can't just look at a blue pool of cards and look at the card quality itself and get as excited about it as you can other colors, but I think it enables certain decks that are very powerful.
But yeah, and there's also a blue deck that's an Archaeomancer deck.
Oh, yeah.
There's absolutely a control deck. We had it in one of our polls.
We did.
Where you're just like, getting back switcheroos and getting back murders and, hey, here's this Essence Strain, I'm going to get it back, or I'm just going to block your Exalted Guy with my unsummoned Archaeomancer all day long.
That deck played really well, too. I was actually a little surprised.
It didn't look great on paper.
I thought it was our weakest deck, and when we played it out, it was actually pretty good. Like, I think that that might actually be a viable thing here.
Yeah. By the way, on my, I have a little achievement card, and I want to see someone switcheroo a stuffy doll today.
Yes. That one took me a minute. You mentioned it, and I was like, wait, why would you? Oh.
Tap, deal you a damage. Well, you're certainly dealing a damage.
Yes, a damage.
I've chosen a player, and that has not changed when I cast Stuffy Doll.
Our ideal play is to main phase and then attack them. And they're like, yeah, block that thing. And you're like, you take 5.
Okay, assuming that you've got some blue in a deck, do you play Essence Scatter and Negate, only one of them, or neither? And why? In turn, Brian David Marshall, go.
I probably play both of them.
Okay, why?
Because I want to deal with planeswalkers, I want to deal with creatures. I'm going to have card drawing or some sort of, if I'm red-blue, I'm going to have Rummaging Goblin, and I can move stuff around.
So you're happy with both?
I'm happy with both.
Marshall?
In normal sealed and draft, I would lean heavily on Essence Scatter and less so on Negate, but in this format, I would play both as well.
And Zach?
Yeah, I would also play both of the cards. I mean, we've talked a lot about cute strategies featuring a lot of synergies. Another really good strategy in this format is just casting powerful cards.
Yes.
Because you have a lot of them, and Negate and Essence Scatter both stop that. And your opponent's is going to have removal spells.
You
need Negate for that.
You see, I wouldn't play either. I'd play Mana Link. I want words with you later.
Yeah. We could be so lucky.
Yeah. All right. So, overall then, there seems to be a tension between creatures and removal in that you have more than you need of both.
Yes.
So when you're sitting there looking at the 29 cards that are 18 creatures, 9 pieces of functional removal, and a couple of clever things, where do the cuts come? do you go low on creatures and you just kill everything? Or are there literally, like you say, pacifisms running around in people's sideboards?
No, they're not running around in people's sideboards. What you do is you say, I have this red-white deck, and I've got 30 cards.
Exactly.
And you've got this green-red deck here that's okay, or this green-red deck that has Farseeks and 2 Evolving Wilds. Well, how about we cut some of the weaker cards from your deck, and we put these 2 or 3 pacifisms in that deck, and take advantage of your mana.
You spread the wealth out, and the first cuts usually for me come in curve considerations. If I have quality creatures sitting at each of my curve spots, I will start cutting the more expensive ones. I mean, if they're all roughly doing similar jobs, I'll start cutting the expensive ones so that I can, my goal in a limited game, and this is no exception, is I want to play 2 things at once. I want to get to turn 4 and go 2-drop, 2-drop.
Right.
That to me is a big step up for me in the game, and that's what I'm trying to do. So if I can lower my curve by cutting, if my quality is overall very high, I'll do that.
And I completely agree with that. I think mana curves are tremendously important in this format because, again, your opponent is not going to be struggling for their 23rd playable card.
No.
Right. And so it's not as though you can just sort of say, okay, I have 6 4-drops in my deck, but maybe they're going to, skip a beat or whatever. I won't have to deal with a 2-drop. There won't be pressure. No, they're going to have access to threats, and you have to respond to that.
You know when you're playing a game of Magic and it's just like a one-on-one limited format, or you're playing one-on-one in like a draft format, and you're like, they get to turn 4, and there's an archetypical 4-drop that you dread. You're like, oh, please don't have this in your deck. They have it.
Yes.
They have the Griffin Protector.
By the way, it's Healer of the Pride.
Right, oh yeah.
That's the one I never, because I'm always like, you're at 8, and then they're like this, and I'm like, you're not at 8 anymore.
Okay, Marshall, I know you are on a mission to civilize the world of Magic, and I know that you are quite
maybe you don't know what that word
life
means.
You're quite down on life gain a lot of the time on your shows.
Yeah.
You're like, boys, Angel's Mercy, not a card.
Right.
That kind of thing. But a card like Healer of the Pride, that can do big things, right?
Huge things, yeah. So what we talk about is, if you're playing spells that are life gain for the sake of life gain, that's usually a mistake. They're usually not worth the card that they take in your hand and in your deck. But if you could get life gain incidentally throughout the game based on a creature, older things like Faith's Fetters, cards that will gain you life and do something at the same time, that life gain is fantastic. It's very welcome addition. Thrag Tusk, if you're lucky to open that awesome rare, is a huge bump in your life total, and that's a big deal when you're playing the game. You just don't want to be focusing on gaining life for the sake of it. That's when it's not worth it.
As an aside, Faith's Fetters would be awesome in M14. Could you see what you can do
Are
about
you
that?
fielding requests?
I was going to say, yeah.
Just send your requests to.
Yeah, we've got Mana Leak and Faith's Fetters. I'll come up with something.
It's sort of like a jukebox. You just put in your entry, and I'll kick it back to you.
So you're saying we put in some money and something?
I'm not saying I accept
I got it.
On the plus side, Zach, you're clearly wearing me down because I used to ask for counterspell, and now I'm asking for Mana Leak.
Right.
So,
yeah, I'll get back to you when we start thinking about that.
Okay. Yes. Good. Okay. So in terms of, we talked about the style of decks that different people like to play. But let's assume for a moment, because we're coming towards the end of our discussion here, we're going to do some more team sealed, if you like, from the practical side, once we've had a chance to look and see what did people actually do this morning, and once we've watched the first round. But let's put you in the position that you're all Jelga Vigersma. You are the undisputed captain of your team, and you are going to be given the task. Other people are going to write some things down. You're going to say, put that over there, put that over there, put that over there.
He was, what, 95% of his team's pro points?
Something like that, yes. So end up with 3 decks for me that you are going to be comfortable sending into battle. So Brian David Marshall, you happen to be next to me, so I'm going to start with you again. Give me 3 decks that you would like.
So some either red-white or white-blue aggro deck, depending whether it's tokens or flyers, whichever way the pack leads you. A green-red, maybe 3-color mana-fixing, like kind of mid-range deck, and then a blue-black control deck that's just going to grind out and win the long game. and sideboards, and appropriate sideboards for each that I'm able to make some adjustments based on which deck my opponent's playing.
Okay, let's turn to Marshall. Where would you like to see 3 decks?
Black, White, Exalted. I want a quick, pressure, aggressive deck. I want one, because we're going to be playing each other deck, and that's going to have a good matchup, I believe, at least against 2 of them, and then you might be able to run over the last guy. So I want that deck. Black, White, Exalted, done. The next deck I want is similar to one that you said, BM. It's Red-Green Beats. I want to be able to have creatures with haste. I want to have big threats. I want to have big green creatures to finish with, and then the red spells to clear the way. The last deck that I want is a blue-black control deck, because what I found is that the black cards that you want in the Black-White Exalted deck don't coincide that often with the cards that you want in the blue-black deck, and then I think a splash for red is not unwarranted. Maybe you get a nickel bowl. I mean, I'm just saying, you know. But even if you don't, you know, you
How
can
Jim
often
of becoming
find,
of you.
Yeah. and so I'd like a blue-black, maybe splash red control. Those are kind of what I envision when I think of the format.
All right, Zach, over to you. Give me 3 decks.
It's really hard to say. I mean, I think it's very dependent upon your pool.
Of course, no. But what you would like to send
What I
into
would like
battle?
to. Oh, well, I'd like to bust a bunch of broken rares and play blue-black control with a bunch of divinations, like I talked about. Just draw all my sick cards. I like green-red or green-white, actually. I think green-white is very underrated. I think size is very good in this format. And I like mono-red a lot. I think it's very easy to open up cards like Arms Dealer that transform that deck into a powerhouse.
Flunky somebody out.
Exactly, and your Goblin Battle Jester
Yes.
means you don't care about how good their cards are. None of them interact with.
Okay, we have a question from Cover It Live, and someone has asked, how many Mind Sculpts would you want to see in your pool before you would start Oh, will you hush? How many would you want to see in your pool before sane people who aren't Marshall Sutcliffe would consider playing that as a deck? So what is the number where you start going, there's some there?
4 to 5?
I mean, 4 to 5, but I really want like 2 entrancers then,
right?
Or I really want a Sands of Delirium or a Jace.
Yeah.
I really want something to put me there. You know, something that I can build around.
Yelga Vegasma got asked this question and said, I guess if you had 12, you'd play them.
I like that guy.
But like in the right deck, the answer is 2. Sure. Right? Like in the right deck where you have like all these control elements and not really a way to win, but a way to not lose, and then you're just like, do it, or Chaomancer, do it.
Because you need 2 of them so that you can divination 3 times and not be behind on the transaction. But I actually agree with you. I want the Jace or the Sands. Those are the milled. I played FNM 2 weeks ago. I had both of those cards in my deck. So, but I won.
Must be nice.
Did you have any Mind Sculpts?
Yes, and guess what? I didn't run it.
Oh.
Yeah, I just left it in the board because my whole deck, everything in my deck was moving towards I'm going to play Sands and I'm going to play.
And you feel like drawing a Mind Sculpt gives you a window to lose the game.
Exactly. It's
right. You're like, I have a Mind Sculpt, and now I didn't draw a removal spell. I didn't draw one of my win cards.
It doesn't block, and it doesn't kill one of their guys, so it's out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I feel bad enough playing
it's
the
Blue
Sands.
Angel's mercy to you.
Yeah, basically, and it doesn't gain lives. Yeah.
Okay, a couple of out there strategies, things that you're not necessarily comfortable playing, but you arrive at the possibility that maybe now is the time. So we've already mentioned one of them, Nicol Bolas. There are all sorts of cards that you kind of get forced to play with that in order to get there. So if you have a Gem of Becoming, you are morally obliged to put that in the same deck. So that's one card that's doing nothing while they're beating you to death with their Vampire Nighthawk. If you like, you know, in terms of impact on the board.
But Gem of Becoming's not doing nothing. Though. Even when it's not casting Nicol Bolas, it's helping you get. I mean, it's giving you cards. It's getting you to your 5s and your 6s. Right. It's letting you cast Public Execution because you have enough mana.
That's true, but Rich's point stands. You know, if you're playing the Black-White Exalted deck and your turn 3 is Gem of Becoming, and they're like, sure, hit you for 5, and you're like, crack my Gem of Becoming, like hit you for 6, like you're going to lose pretty quickly.
Yeah, crack my Gem of
it's not
Becoming,
that it
play an
does
island,
nothing.
unsummon the guy you
Yeah,
attacked me
now
with.
this I can get it. It's like I said, it's not that it does nothing.
Unsummon's like
but-
Time Walk against the Exalted deck.
Yeah, it actually is. Yeah, it just takes their entire attack step away from them.
And they, usually play something before combat, so they can't replay their guy.
Right. Then you're not going to jam Gem of Becoming just into a deck, right? If you're going to do that, you've got to play your Crippling Blights, you've got to play your Unsummons, you got to try and get a Fog Bank if you're lucky or whatever. I mean, you build a deck to take advantage of the fact that you have draw 3 cards that also fixes your mana.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, you've got to account for that.
I mean, I'm not down on Gem of Becoming as a
Yeah,
card,
of course,
but I'm just acutely aware that while they're going, we've got 22 cards and we're going to add Gem of Becoming.
Yeah, I mean, it goes in a direction for sure.
But someone else is going, now, are we cutting this Pacifism or this Searing Spear to go in a different deck? Those are not the same.
By the way, just talking about cards, you just mentioned Crippling Blight. Well, that was a card we discovered. It's like, okay, we have the Black-White Exalted deck. We really want to put these Pacifisms in here, but the other deck needs them. And we were able to just jam. We don't really care if their creatures are attacking.
Exactly.
We just wanted their creatures not to be blocking. So we just like slid all the Pacifisms over to the other deck, and we just jammed every Crippling Blight into a deck. And we're like, ha, nice Fog Bank, smash you.
Right. I think that card's reasonable. I also think a card like Goblin Arsonist is very valuable in this format because, like we've said, there's all these really fast, aggressive, synergistic strategies, but they're the rewards to play a control game too. And if you have stuff like Crippling Blight, like Arsonist, to just keep you alive, they're cheap and efficient. I think those can really pay off. I mean, obviously, Arsonist can attack too, but you can play that card in a control deck.
That's one of the things I want to see is, as this is sort of like a mini constructed that we've talked about, how many like kind of 1-drops that you might not play in a normal draft deck actually get played in this because you're like, I have this very specific curve, I have this really specific plan I want to enact every turn, like the Mastiff or other 1-drops that don't necessarily get played a lot in other decks, right? Like I made a case I really wanted to play that.
Yeah.
In a red-white beatdown deck, I'm like, well, I just want a lot of guys.
That goes back to what I was saying about curve earlier.
Yeah.
You want to put that thing down.
Okay, I'm going to go along the line, starting with Zach for this other archetype. But I'm going to put you
start out this time.
Nah, you're right, and I'm going to put you in a specific situation.
All right.
You are in the office at Wizards of the Coast.
All right.
So clearly, this is not sanctioned. There's not competitive in any way, shape, or form. Nobody will ever know the result except you and your friend and colleague.
All right.
And in your seal pool, I give you Boundless Realms and Door to Nothingness.
Oh.
Are you going to run it?
You say it as like it's hypothetical.
Did you?
Oh, we had a playtest. Mike McCallion actually inspired me. Mike McCallion had the double Door to Nothingness deck. I had Boundless Realms, Gilded Lotus, Door to Nothingness, and I had to open the door. I had Gems of Becoming. I mean, it was not that hard to get to 10. It was not that hard to get 5 colors, and I didn't have that many threats. So yeah, it was time to draw cards, play artifacts, and win the game.
Okay. Marshall Sutcliffe, I got a question for you.
Marshall. Marshall's a shame.
You're the
Closing the door.
So you're
nailing boards across.
This one's done.
So you're on. Let's say you're going to do a live stream.
Okay.
For your legions of limited resources fans.
Sure.
But we've kind of rigged it, so you're going to get Boundless Realms and Door to Nothingness. You going to run that?
Yeah, I'll do it. So. I'll make sacrifices for the listeners, for the viewers. Like I'm willing to do. I actually go quite a bit deeper than I let on when it comes to this stuff. I learned this from BDM and about how to
secrets are coming
really
out.
Go. It's true. Like it's confessional here, and it's true. I do though. I'll push pretty far into it when I'm playing a draft that I'm taking seriously. Then I won't. Like I just don't think the risk is worth it to like try to do any shenanigans. But I would do it.
Okay, if I gave your fellow limited resources commentator John Laux Boundless Realms and Jordan Others, he would have nothing to do with that.
No,
correct?
that's where he starts.
I was gonna say, John would splash a 6th color.
Yeah.
Like other people are like opening Nicol Bolas and being like, oh, all right, I guess I have to do this, and they're like angsty about it. Like John Laux is like opening the pack and he's like rubbing, and he's like, come on, Nicol Bolas.
Exactly. And he puts it down and then he browses the rest of the pack to see what he's passing.
Okay, Brian David Marshall.
Yes.
You are on Team USA. It is day 2.
I'm so sorry,
of the
America.
So are they.
He has achievements to unlock.
Yeah. Of the World Magic Cup. Nothing matters more than the matches you're about to play.
Sure.
And they're sitting in the Team USA pool. Boundless Realms, Door to Nothingness. Do you even vaguely contemplate that risk?
Absolutely contemplate it. You know, you have to look at everything. You have to like say, is this something I can do? Is this something I have to do? You know, depending on the card pool. I mean, I don't want to, and I would never, you know, do it to the exclusion of better strategies. But I mean, if it was the best option I had to win, you know, you talk about just not having the threats, you know, then I would go down that road. But I would never want to.
Okay. Brian David Marshall, the Pro Tour historian. Marshall Sutcliffe from Limited Resources. Zach Hill from Inside R&D. Great to have you all with us. Thanks for your insights into the format. When we come back after round one, we're going to see what all the teams did. Did anyone come to blows during deck building? Did anyone end up with a sideboard yay high and the other two didn't have anything at all to bring in? We'll tell you all of that after round one. But it is time to get the action underway here at the World Magic Cup on day two. And boy, do we have a belter to start with. It is Paulo Vida Dama da Rosa of Brazil and his cohorts of doom up against Brian Kibler, Alex Binnick, Joe Panacchio. It's Team USA. Let's get the party started and hand you over in the booth to Rashad Miller.
Hey, here I go. I'm Rashad Miller in the booth, and we are going to watch a great match. And you were just watching these guys in the news desk talk about the Mind Sculpt deck. Well, let's just say we're going to see one of these decks is the Mind Sculpt deck. And there aren't any Jaces. There aren't any Sands of Delirium, 5 Mind Sculpts. Brian Kibler, he is going to do it. He's going to do that. That's what he's playing, and we're going to see that against Paulo Vida Dama da Rosa. He's going to be playing, you know, a more traditional blue-black control deck. You know, he's got removal, he's got card drawing, he's going to be playing regular Magic. So that's going to be our main table. The other matches, Alex Binnick versus Juliano Souza, and the third match is Joe Pincio versus Leonardo Sequeira. So, you know, players are still shuffling, some high fives, some fist pumps, USA crowd, everyone's watching. And, you know, the unsung heroes, the fourth player, we're going to see Luis Scott Vargas, you know, kind of in the background. And I think the players are still shuffling. So talk a little bit, you know what? We talked a little bit about Brian Kibler's deck. Let's not give Paulo Vida Dama da Rosa the short end of this stick. He has a very solid deck. He's got a couple of Giant Scorpions. He has Essence Drain, couple of Murders. He's definitely not light on the creature removal. But the thing is, Brian Kibler's deck, only 5 or 6 creatures. And really, there's a Fog Bank to block his, to block Paulo Vida Dama da Rosa's creatures. There's nothing much else that Paulo's going to be worried about. So players are drawing their hands. I think we might be ready to go down pretty soon. And no, we got a mulligan. So Brian Kibler didn't find any Mind Sculpts in his open. So we can look a little bit at some of the other matchups. So we're going to have Alex Binnick, and he is playing actually a very interesting deck. It's mono green. It's 16 forests, bunch of Arbor Elves, every green fatty that's out there. He's topping up at Dustdale Worms, and he's got a lot of card advantage with pack leaders and with Elvish Visionaries. So we're going to see an interesting take on, you know, green as a color. Green's usually all about big creatures, but there's a lot of card advantage going on here. And he's going to be playing against Miss Juliano Souza, and his deck looks like a nice red-white, which I'm going to assume is very aggressive, and it is. We have we got a bunch of 2-drops. We have Intrepid Hero, which is going to be very good against all of the massive creatures. We got some massive creatures that are going to just die to this Intrepid Hero. So I hear that we're actually ready to go down to the match. So all right, so here we go. We got the players shuffling up, getting ready. And shortly I will be joined in the booth by the one, the only Pro Tour historian himself, Brian David Marshall. Hi, David. Brian David Marshall, how you doing?
I'm good, Rashad. How are you?
I am excellent. This is going to be great.
I'm really excited.
I don't know if you heard what I was talking about with what decks we have here. Maybe I'll let you discover the decks. Let's look at Paulo Vitor Damarosa's deck.
Yes.
What do you think of that deck? Very PVDDR, you would say?
Let's see. That's a 9?
It's a nice blue-black control deck.
Blue-black. It's got our Chaomancer.
Yeah, we got some removal. We got some.
Yeah,
guys.
just like kind of like a grinding all that.
Yeah. And we also have a blue-black deck right here.
Is this who he's playing?
Yes, he is playing Brian Kibler.
Sorry. No.
So
is that a 5?
That
is
is
that a 5? That's a 5?
Did your eyes go straight to the 5?
That's a 5.
That is a 5.
Huh.
Evidently, that's the number.
That is the number. Okay.
Wait, 5 what?
5 Mind Sculpt.
Yes.
What? Interesting. Interesting. I'm just gonna. Sorry, I need to go check Paulo's sideboard.
Well, all we have to do is check that there are some cards. So there is at least the up to 50 strategy.
Yeah. Oh. Whoa. Did you happen to see this artifact down here?
I did not.
Intro to Paulo.
Okay.
Is that a pair of Staff of Nin?
That is a pair of Staff of Nin. So I don't know who's that working better for.
The 5 Mind Sculpts, but.
Okay.
All right, so we are finally ready to go. We actually have some action going
we're
on.
underway. Swamp from.
Get the party started.
We're getting the party started. We just Mind Sculpt right away. 7 cards?
Yeah, 7 cards.
I think we need like a little graphic with a little number over
Paulo's. Do you think Paulo's going to go to 50 cards?
You know what? That's always been a viable strategy against a deck, especially if he doesn't see like. I don't know. I actually don't know. I'm not sure. But we have a giant Scorpion over for Brian Kibler.
Right. So he's just looking to have cards in his deck. Hold the ground, hold the air. He's looking for Fog Banks, Kraken Hatchlings, Giant Scorpions, trades, blocks.
And he has all of those.
Keep you at bay. Stiff arm you, right?
Exactly.
He's really just looking to run the stiff arm.
Oh, we are back in the Mind Sculpting. We are.
All right.
That's 14 cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, that's more than a quarter of his deck. It's almost a third of his deck.
Right, 14 cards in the graveyard. He's mulliganed to 5, which is relevant.
A relevant strategy.
4th land for Paulo.
So we see a Harbor Bandit there.
And it's joined by Liliana Spectre.
Yep. I think that's actually the Shade.
Right? Oh, yeah, Liliana's Shade.
So that's a card out of his deck now.
That's
I might have failed to find that.
Yeah. I think Paulo's probably, maybe he's waiting for something more substantial as Brian Kibler is still stuck on 3 land.
Does he have a 3rd Mind Sculpt?
Yeah.
Yes, he does.
2 murders.
And so Brian's.
What do you got left over here?
He's definitely making note of all of the removal cards that he's
9
seen.
cards left.
9 cards left in Paulo's deck.
Luis.
That's 1 Mind Sculpt away. The Chronomaton hits the board.
Mana.
And we actually have a report from the floor that
So
the
far,
Mind Sculpt might already be in Brian Kibler's hand. Which, in theory, that would leave 2 cards left in Paulo Vitor Damarosa's library. But both of the players are still at 20 life. And then we have an attack with the Spectre and the...
Luis, how do you think I should?
So here you hear Brian Kibler taking advantage of the coaching rules. He's like, Luis, what should I do? Not what should I do, but how do you think I should block? This is what I'm thinking about doing. What do you think? So he's like, I'm just going to put the Giant Scorpion in front. Cower in fear. Takes down both guys.
7.
Yes, and that is the final Mind Sculpt. Comes down to 17, but I don't think he cares that much. Mind Sculpt you a 4th time. He's counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
The question, he's got to think here about whether or not to. Right, he just wants to scoop. Even if he's got a card left, he might just not want to show him
The
rest of the deck.
He already showed him so many cards in his deck, so there's no reason to show him his entire deck.
Wow. So
Yeah, so these players are going to shuffle off game 2, and you were talking about the sideboard strategy of, you know, not maybe altering your deck,
Wording thoughts?
the contents of the deck, but just
It's tons.
putting more cards in your deck.
Yeah. You know, having a 50-card deck, keep the same land ratio.
Swing. Yeah.
You know, is that so? We're gonna go across while they go those guys sideboard. We're gonna take a look at Alex Binnick of Team USA playing against
Juliano Souza.
Juliano Souza
Yeah.
from
Brazil.
Team Brazil. He was the 9th place finisher at Grand Prix Sao Paulo. Souza.
Very accomplished.
Both of these guys won their local World Magic Cup qualifiers to be here today.
Yeah, and now Alex Bennick is actually playing a very interesting deck that gets me going.
Oh yeah.
Because if you look at his land, you see 16 forests.
Oh,
then,
wow.
Yeah, and then you see 4 Arbor Elves. So I'm in. It doesn't
That's
matter
your
what,
EDH
yeah,
deck.
It doesn't matter what else you're doing.
I mean Commander. Sorry. I'll put $1 in the Commander jar.
Yeah, and Sousa's deck is a very aggressive red-white deck, as we can see with the double War Priest of Thrun in play and some land.
I get tokens?
So currently Alex is at 14, and Sousa's at 18.
Yeah, I see 2 War Priests trying to hold up.
I actually didn't notice that force on the other side. We have a Dustdale Worm, Garrick's Pack Leader, Arbor Elf.
A fungal sprouting.
Yeah, fungal sprouting.
A fungus is sprouted.
So those are 4, 1, 1. Are they
Se eu me
separate?
fechar, ele vai atacar com tudo, porque ele tá jogando em volta do que tira atacante. Não bateu com o 4-4
The
nunca.
Brazilian team, little bit of conversation amongst themselves
Yeah.
in Portuguese.
To Paulo.
Yes. Now my Spanish is a little okay, but
19.
I'm not good
Your
enough
Portuguese is rusty?
yeah, it's a little rusty.
This is definitely a very very aggressive deck played by Souza. If it gets to the point where the big green fatties
Sim,
are on
mas
the
eu vou
board,
jogar
he's
Xandra
going to be in
fora agora.
trouble. Like, as we see,
Right.
you know, he's playing like,
Então vou matar bicho.
you know, 3 Goblin Arsonists, 2 Mog Flunkies, a couple of Searing Spears, but he doesn't have a lot of answers to this.
Yeah, I think he's looking over to Paulo for some answers. That's why he's asking what should be on next play, and it looks like
Copy my
Chandra
next
is going to
spell.
be the play.
Yes.
Ok. Same target.
Chandra used the ability to copy his spell, and he's going to use 2 Searing Spells to get rid of the Pack Hunter.
That worm is a problem.
Yeah. I think. Do I send like 3 at Chandra and him at him? Or.
So now you hear Binnick talking to Luis. He's like, what do I send to Chandra? What do I send to you?
Leave him back? Yeah.
So would you say that it was an advantage or a disadvantage that Luis Scott Vargas was the member of the team that is not
I would say
actively
it's not a
playing?
tremendous disadvantage. I think you always want LSV at the
Take
table.
7? 11?
So it looks like 2 tokens go after the Chandra. Chandra's going to bite the dust. I think all 4 actually went after, and there was 2 blocks. Oh, and there's the second of our Dustdale Worms.
I just want to be sure.
There's one more.
It looks like Team USA is up 1 game all the way across the tables now. We just saw Alex Binnick go up 1. It looks like Joe Pinocchio
he's
just
kinda
won
like
his first
stagger
game. And we saw Brian Kibler, Mill,
didn't see-
Paulo Vitra Damadurosa into oblivion in their game.
What even
Right, so it looks like we're going to have our choice of game
Go big
2s.
there.
So why don't we go back
have
to
no,
Joe Panaccio
red.
versus Leonardo Sequeira to
Getting
see what's
through
going on
against
back there.
Okay. I would really like to get back to Paulo as well, though.
guess
Well, I think that's going to happen.
All right,
Mas
awesome.
qual foi o jogo?
We're definitely going to get back to Paulo. Those guys, we're going to hold that match.
Awesome.
We're going to hold
He is
the
what?
Paulo
Oh, he's
match
just a knight.
so that we can come back
Foda que eu
and
não sei
get
tirar.
another taste of the Mind Sculpt. And what's the answer that Paulo came up with to
Right.
how to beat the Mind Sculpt.
Right.
Okay, so if you're Paulo and
Caralho, eu tinha esse bicho, né?
you know, I'm sitting across from you, and I'm Brian Kibler, and I go
vou ganhar
turn
esse cara.
2 Mind Sculpt,
Eu tô
turn
ganhando.
3 Mind Sculpt, turn 4 Mind Sculpt, turn 5 Mind Sculpt. How many mind skills do you think I have?
Right. We know it's 5, but he might be like, it's 8. He might think it's 8.
Right. So yeah. So we're gonna watch we're gonna watch Pinocchio versus Sequeira, so that we can get a little taste of all 3 of the matches that are
And
going
we get
on.
a little taste of your Brazilian accent too there.
Ooh, yeah, that was actually Spanish.
Might actually a lot worse on the draw.
You know, I just anything
sure you wanna
that
play?
isn't
You sure?
an American or English or Australian name, I just go with the Spanish, and it usually works unless we are in France.
Oh.
Like the French team, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. But it's another one of those. Well, I believe languages where there's enough exceptions that you can't just roll with it.
Like English.
Well, English is the epitome of rules. You mean exceptions?
Did you see the aneurysm we gave Rich Hagon last night at dinner?
I heard about it. We can save that one for later. But
Okay.
I did hear he told us about it because he was still twitching a little bit. I was like, Rich, what's wrong? And then he explained it. And then I said, oh, that sounds like a funner thing to do because that's a word now.
Yeah. Marshall Sutcliffe said, you may have designed the English language, Rich, but we developed it.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask every single time.
All right, so it looks like Brazil's gonna
draw.
mulligan with their backs against the wall. And
now Pinocchio is trying to make a decision about whether or not he wants a mulligan. He's
Yeah.
on the draw.
Okay.
He's
As long as you say
there
so.
are a lot of land in it.
I was ready to throw it right back into the 60, but 40.
60.
As long as you say so, Coach.
Yeah.
He mulliganed to 6, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Joe's a PT.
Brazil way more
stalwart.
disciplined than Team USA.
okay.
You know, there was a lot of excitement in the sort of Atlantic Seaboard pro tour community. You know, when he won his qualifier.
And congratulations to Joe, and
Where
he's
is
doing well.
Yeah, he went 6-1 yesterday.
Yeah,
Or,
I think didn't everyone 6-1, 6-1? Everyone went 6-1, right?
I think so. Yeah, well, except Alex.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, he took one for the team because he's a
start?
notorious
Yes. Okay.
watcher or bird.
Railbird?
Yeah,
Yeah.
railbird. All right, now we
geez,
got some
why you
action.
even
Turn
point
one
about
Arbor
that?
Elf, as expected. Oh no, this isn't.
No,
This is a different Arbor
This
Elf
is
deck.
Arbor Elf. This is green blue Arbor Elf. This is I love it.
Little
Into
water courser.
Yeah.
That is a Cathedral of War over on Joe Pinocchio's side.
Yeah.
Now, Joe Pinocchio is playing a very aggressive
That's what I
Blue-White
thought.
Skies deck with quite a few of those pacifisms. Like you see one right there.
No, that I didn't want to.
2 mana gets us a Deadly Recluse.
The green
not
new
even good.
blade.
I thought that was Plummet.
Really good.
3 mana. And we have
Oh, yeah.
Attendant Knight.
No.
No, is it a different knight?
It's a Guardian of the Cross.
Guardian.
It is.
That's the
Oh,
Guardian of the
I
Cross.
thought it was an Attendant Knight. I was waiting for the token. That is a Guardian of the Cross.
No, I think
Yep,
if that
one.
had been the
19.
attendant knight, we would have seen the Essence Scatter in Sequoia's hand.
This is move to the
We
stack.
would have seen the Arbor Elf on tap of Forest, and we would have seen Essence Scatter come out. There's Void Stalker.
Yeah, Void Stalker.
I love that card.
It's actually
I'm
well
thinking
designed,
about putting
I
it in my
think.
commander deck.
Oh, why not? You get to reuse you guys, and that is a Griffin Protector.
And is the Griffin Protector gonna? He lets the Griffin Protector stick unless he doesn't have. Oh, he does have the Essence Scatter.
You
but
know
he's
what?
not.
Maybe there's
Oh, he's got the Deadly Recluse, so
Yeah,
he's just like, man, it's fine. I've got an answer to that.
maybe there's something he's already.
In fact, he's got
too
two, right?
afraid
He's got
of.
the Deadly Recluse, and he's got the Void Stalker.
Oh, yeah.
Should he need it?
My handwriting's atrocious.
Plenty of
Sorry
answers
about that.
already on the board, and we're going to see the first island from Joe. Attack with the Griffin Protector, and Nope.
Here's like, yeah, no.
Yep. And that's what that guy's
I
gonna do.
agree to your terms.
And there's Avon Squire. So scores 19 to 20.
So Square's like, yeah, I let it resolve. Oh, then he draws another one.
Done?
A feign of an attack with the
So
Void
that's
Stalker.
kind of an interesting thing where he's 3 Essence Scatters in his deck, and they're obviously talking about the cards in his hand, and you know, at some point you kind of tip off. That's one of the downsides of team conversation, is that you sometimes will talk about a card and you think you're talking about it obliquely, but really, like, it's highly likely that Joe Panaccio knows they're talking about an Essence Scatter at this point.
Exactly, and the Void Stalker just shuffled itself away with the Aven Squire, so.
Yeah, there's a famous incident happened at the Two-Headed Giant Grand Prix in Boston, where Matt Rubin and his teammate are, you know, talking about Mutilate that's in one of their hands, or Damnation, and he's like, if you are going to play that, I am not going to play any of these first. And
hey, look, like Damnation.
That's awesome. Good job on the push tool, boys.
I mean, it's nice to know that you guys are paying attention. All right, so 4 mana or 3? Okay, 3 and then untap and 4. 4 mana, and we are going to clone our Water Courser.
Two cards?
Yeah, I have 2 cards.
Little confirmation on how many cards are left in Leonardo's hand.
Good.
And another pass. Could this be Team Brazil's first game win? Too close to say? Too early?
I think we're, I mean, that to me looks like the classic signaling of a fairy intruder.
Yeah. Well, seems like there's no block, so
3?
Clone gets in for 3. That's going to bring Joe down to 16. Got a snazzy look at the hand. We see a Plains and a shoulder.
Another Griffin Protector.
Yeah, and there actually are Fairy Invaders in Joe's hand, looks like.
Oh, okay.
He just decided not to go with it.
Well, he wanted to draw out the Essence Scatter that he was pretty sure was in his hands.
In comes the Clone. Looks like no blocks again.
Okay, take 3.
3.
That's going to bring Joe down to 13. Done. So it looks like we're in the bash and pass plan.
And he's going to try to Fairy Invader block here, I guess. Maybe.
Another attack with Water Courser.
9.
We're attacking for 4 this time. Joe's going to go down to 9.
Oh, his Fairy Invaders would attack for 5. He doesn't want to block necessarily. He wants to. His Fairy Invaders resolve.
Yep, and, well, I think it's still on his stack. And I think there's some conversation now. Is it time?
Well, yeah, it's time because you're talking about it. It's not like you're getting any value out of that card.
Wait, but it's not time yet. Not
All
yet.
right.
We're not doing it yet. We're not pulling the trigger.
5? Yeah. 15?
Yeah, teams. No.
Sounds like Paulo's putting on some spectacles to increase his view 2 tables away.
Okay, there's a pacifism. So
pacifism for the clone, which is a copy of Water Courser.
An exact copy now with the pacifism. They're dressed the same too. They're like twins.
You're wearing my outfit.
Sure. Prey upon. Yeah.
2 mana, Prey upon. This is after a pump of the Water Courser. So that's going to trade effectively a 2 for 2.
One
and
card.
A second Arbriel. Another land for Joe.
Yeah, both players are in the kind of. You see a little bit of a shake in the hand there. For Sequeira.
And Naturalize takes away the pacifism, and we are all in. These Arbriels have.
No.
They're jobless. They don't have a job anymore. They just hit the red zone.
4.
So 2 pumps on the clone, which is a Water Courser. It's going to bring Joe down to 5. Oh, Joe's going to go to 4 because of the Arbriel damage also.
Yeah.
Windrake. And it looks like 3 land left for Joe.
But he's sort of making it look like he's got something else he's thinking about. Just go. No, you know what? You go.
I am on 4.
Little game state check for the team USA. In goes the water cruiser.
I block here, yeah.
Block,
I don't
two
block
pumps.
both, yeah? No?
No block.
Yeah.
Yeah, pump twice.
Too tight. Yeah.
So 2 pumps, that's going to
Yeah,
take away the Guardians. Joe draws another land.
Yeah.
Joe's at 4.
No.
It's like, wait.
So
And, prey upon first. And that's 4.
That's game.
It. All right. So Team Brazil is on the board.
So it's
I could have done differently there, right? Okay.
It's 1-1 with at this match that we were just watching.
Right.
I think we are still holding the Benek Souza.
Yep, and we're going to go back and take a look at the bespeckled Paulo Vitor Damadurosa and the bejacketed Brian Kibler.
Yeah. So we get to see what traumatic events happen, or how traumatically affected Paulo was by this. And I don't see any new sizes in his deck.
Doesn't look like he added.
Looks like a standard, still 40-card deck.
Yep.
But he's stuck on 2 land. We just have a couple of islands for Paulo, and he definitely passed to Brian Kibler, who has a couple of islands, swamp. He has his Mind Sculpt in his hand, chose not to play it. And now turn 3 is a Scroll Thief for Paulo Vitor Damadurosa.
Yep.
I see a Scroll Thief and match it with the...
So I got an interesting question on Twitter from someone. He sort of was talking about if a player builds their seal deck to 40 cards, and they go to sideboard, he's like, aren't they stuck at 40? Don't they have to sideboard 1 for 1 exactly like they do in Constructed?
No, that's only for Constructed.
That is only for Constructed. In Limited, you can add as many cards as you like.
Right, or take away cards if your original deck
if
is
you're over 40. Yeah.
Right. As long as you're over 40 and you're just using the cards that are in your pool, it's all good. And you have access to unlimited basic land.
Right.
From the judges.
Right.
So if you want to board in your Battle of Wits, feel free.
Right, and we've seen that an example is the Into the Woods, so the Lost in the Woods deck, where people are like, I'm going to side into 42 forests and a Lost in the Woods.
Yeah. No, 2-1.
So there was an Agent of Boas hits the board. I think he didn't see any instance of sorceries.
Yeah, no black cards. You see a Planeswalker languishing in Paulo's hand there, Liliana.
And she wants double swamp and wants more swamps in play.
Oh, we're going to look at everything there.
There's a Rise of the Grave, a Public Execution, Liliana, a
Thank you.
blue card, I can't tell what it is, and...
The blue card is Fairy Invaders and Harbor Serpent.
Okay, Fairy Invaders and Harbor Serpent.
So, interesting, you always see people writing down the cards that they see when they duress someone. Paulo wanted his pen because he also wanted to write it down because he wanted to know what cards Brian had seen.
Oh, wow, that's actually interesting.
Right, he wants to be able to, he's like, well, has he seen this card yet?
Nope.
But if he doesn't draw Swamp, that might not matter too much.
Might not matter too much. And now we're sculpting minds. 7 cards, please, says Brian Kibler.
Kibler's kind of out of steam here, though.
Go.
He's got a Sign in Blood, but he doesn't have a second black.
So both players are a little mana miffed, but...
Me.
Now, interesting card in Brian Kibler's hand. He has a Rise to the Grave.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very synergistic.
You're at 21, right? I'm at 21, yeah.
So Brian is at 21 because he gained 3 from an Essence Drain earlier.
Go.
Ooh. Is that Neferox?
That is Neferox, Overlord of Crixus.
Only him.
Good thing you're wearing your glasses, Paulo. It's a lot of text.
Okay.
So it's like, yeah, my agent's not going to stick around that long, so he's just going to block.
We've had some fun games here, Paulo.
So that's Exalted whenever...
whenever attacks alone, defendant player sacrifices.
Oh, wait a minute. Why did
It blocked the giant scorpion.
Oh, it blocked.
It blocked the giant scorpion.
I was like, oh, did he sacrifice that? No.
He wanted to get something out of it while he still could.
Yeah.
So,
14.
So in comes Neferox.
14. That's correct.
So that's going to be 6 damage. Paul's going to go down to 14.
So Kibler's deck can play both ways here. It's not just a mill deck. It does have some bomminess.
Yep, there's a bomb and there's a Rise of the Grave to get a bomb.
I'm surprised Kibler doesn't want to go mind rat you here, see if he can get a creature in his yard and rise from the grave it.
Oh, that's probably... I'm sure Brian Kibler's thought about that.
Yeah, but he's just like, I'm an advantaged here. I don't want to play into a negate or something weird. Or
So it looks like the Souza Bennett match is now tied 1-1.
Oh, exciting.
So it's not going to be the runaway that it looked like in the beginning.
No.
And we didn't really expect it to be. 5 mana, Rise of the Grave on Liliana's Shade. That's going to get his second swap, which is exactly where Paulo wants to be. Now that swap goes to his hand, so it's not going to be on the battlefield.
I tag you.
Thank you. Sacrifice your Liliana Shade. He's like, I don't need to pay attention to this. I don't have to sit here and take this. I can get the heck out of here.
Well, that's new.
So Liliana Shade's getting a little extra camera time, and now it gets sacrificed. Paul goes down to 8.
Go.
But the reason Brian didn't want to play Rise from the Grave earlier is he knows that there's a public execution in Paulo's hand, and he knows that he can bring it back. Oh, he's counting up his mana.
Yeah, Brian just drew a second Mind Rot. Flashes the Rise of the Grave, but
yeah.
he's just going to go Rise of the Grave. I believe the target is going to be...
Oh, right, yeah.
Sure,
that's true.
Neferox.
Luis, you think it is?
Coach,
okay.
What should I do?
Go.
I still have cards in my hand and mana.
Chose not to attack for 2 there, though, with his Scorpion.
That is correct.
I'll probably actually mark off the things that I know you've cast, so I remember these things.
Interesting, because that would put him at 6.
Good thing we got a coach. I'm amusingly not paying as much attention as I would otherwise.
Kepler often comes with his own commentary track.
Especially when he has a Luis Scott Vargas to talk to.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's pretty happy when he's got a Brian Kibler to talk to as well.
That's actually a pretty good shot.
That's a sweet shot.
Of both teams.
Nickel Bolus looming over the action.
making sure things are, not as bad.
Neferox has been murdered.
And Giant Scorpion is now attacking for 1. Divination.
Oh.
Draws an Essence Scatter and another Mind Sculpt.
Yeah.
Paul's down to 7.
So Brian Kibler's playing the classic mill him and kill him plan. It's like, I'm going to get you to 3 cards in your library.
Right. Then attack you for the rest.
Then attack you to death.
And we're back to milling. Mind Sculpt, 7 cards.
See Disentomb and Rise from the Grave. I think Paulo brought both of those cards in.
Yeah. There was a Harbor Serpent that went to the graveyard also.
Yeah.
That could have also been from the sideboard.
Go.
You have how many cards?
I have 4.
This is a rematch, by the way, of the finals of Pro Tour Dark Ascension.
It was. You know what? I don't have any memories of that actual finals.
Oh, yeah, you weren't there, were you?
Yeah, I was in bed.
Yep. Harbor Serpent gets Essence Scattered. Five cards left in Paulo's library.
And there's a Divination. Looks like Brian Kibler's going to cast a Divination.
Draws a Murder.
You have 5 cards now?
Yeah.
Mind Rot you.
So the Mind Rot's going to target.
How many do you have?
I have 4 cards.
Paulo.
Paul's like, all right, I have 5 turns to kill you. Which of these cards do I need to keep?
And little does he know, He thinks he gets to keep 3 of them.
Yeah.
But there's another Mind Rot in Brian Kibler's hand, which is probably going to get cast this turn, but we shall see.
Like, he has an Archaeomancer, but I don't think he has time to cast Archaeomancer, Rise from the Grave something. And win with it.
Right. Well, now Paulo's kind of considering his graveyard in his decision.
Discards Fairy Invaders and Hover Bandit.
So it looks like he kept the Archaeomancer. There's Archaeomancer.
It's going to get Rise from the Grave.
There's Archaeomancer and Rise, yeah.
Yeah. Knight of Infamy. Just top decked.
And there's our Archaeomancer, and that's just going to get a Mind Sculpt, and that's going to get it. That's it.
Wow.
Brian Kibler says 5 is enough as he takes it 2-1 over Paulo Vitor Dom DeRosa with his Mind Sculpt deck.
Right. I'm going to get you to 4 cards and 4 life, and then whichever card I draw first is going to be what finishes you off.
Whichever 4 I can do the next. The next 4 gets you. All right, so now this is the part of the team round
everyone
where
just huddles.
everyone huddles around that match that really matters. And it looks like we're going to the back table, and we're going to get a look at Joe Panaccio versus Leonardo Sequeira again.
Which is tied 1-1.
They are tied 1-1.
We see everyone sort of crowding in. Pacified Windrake on Sequeira's side.
What happened there?
A pacified Watercourser, I should say.
Right.
Well, Panaccio's got a pretty...
He's got an Air Force. Well, no, not really an Air Force. There's an Attendant Knight and a Windrake and a Scroll Thief, along with a Attendant Knight Soldier token, I assume.
An unopposed Scroll Thief, by the way.
Yeah, I wonder how many cards that thing is drawing. Centaur Cursors.
Only 1 forest for Sequeira, who had multiple plays he could have made that turn if he had
more greens.
Yeah, he's also holding a Deadly Recluse.
There's Pacifism, the second one. Goes on the Centaur. The beats keep coming. Texas Scroll Thief, Windrake, Attendant Knight, and a Knight token. So getting the life totals updated right now. And there's a Windrake for Leonardo.
He doesn't play the Deadly Recluse. Looks like he's wanting to sit back on Essence Scatter and Naturalize. Oh, he's got a Naturalize, so he's hoping to ambush something with the Naturalize, I think. Maybe ambush that Attendant Knight with the Centaur Courser.
3 mana for Joe. Gets him an Oblivion Ring. I only see one good target, but we'll see what the trigger targets, and it targets the Windrake.
Okay.
Sending him.
The team's back in there. This could be the ambush play you were talking about.
Yeah.
He has to ask first, ask permission. And there we go. It naturalized on the Pacifism. That was on the Centaur.
He kills the Scroll Thief. He's like, I am tired of you drawing Pacifisms and Oblivion Rings. I will gladly take 2 damage here. Oh.
And Sarah's Angel.
All right.
Okay, good look at Leonardo's hand. Sentinel Spider, Essence Scatter, Forest, and Deadly Recluse.
Here we see that. We see the yin to Sarah Angel's yang, the Sentinel Spider. It's like Sarah Angel's sort of hot and single. This Sentinel Spider is kind of like, put on a couple pounds, and I don't fly like I used to.
So he just goes with the Deadly Recluse. I guess you can only pick one with the mana that he has.
Windrake?
Okay, so only attacking with the Windrake.
No. Não é melhor bloquear.
See the shaking hands again of Sequeira, who's obviously feeling the pressure.
Eu acho. Ele vai a 2, Fever.
I mean, the board position definitely looks to be in Joe Panaccio's favor, so.
It's It's coming around, though.
It is. So a trade for the Deadly Recluse. Deadly Recluse and Windrake go to the graveyard.
Oi? It's got to play the spider here.
Yeah, I mean, the Serenge is still a problem right now. And there is a Sentinel Spider. And there's a Pacifism. And that's game.
It's not game, though, is it?
Well, there was a concession.
E se ele compra terreno?
Oh, it's okay. Who's at 9, takes 4 in the air. Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that was definitely lethal. So congratulations on Joe Pinocchio. He wins that 2-1.
And that means Team USA is
wins.
victorious.
Yep, Team USA wins 2-1. They get 3 points.
My turn?
Those 3 points get added to their total as far as seeding goes.
Right, and they get a crucial. They're the top seed in their pool.
Right.
So that's a crucial win because if they win one more round, there's no way they don't advance.
Wow, because they would be the tiebreaker if they were all, if there are multiple 2-1s.
And this is a rough situation for Brazil because Brazil could be on the outside of a 3-way 2-1 situation.
So we're going to actually see a lot of situations like that, and this is new and it's actually cool, and I'm actually excited about the way this pool play is actually playing out.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be very dramatic.
Yeah, and we're back in the booth, Rashad Miller, and we actually get to see Brian David Marshall now.
Oh, you lucky dogs!
In your nice clothes, you get to sit in the booth in your nice clothes. I get to wear.
I tell you, this booth is so nice. I never want to leave the booth.
It's actually
it's the most comfortable room than anywhere else in all of Gen Con.
And that may be a first. Usually the booth feels just like Gen Con at every other. You're at a Pro Tour and you're in the booth and you're like, what is this, Gen Con? Like, no, not the Gen Con's a great place, and
it's a little hot.
I had to put my badge up here just to prove that we're here because other than us saying it, there's really no proof that we're
doing
actually
it remotely
in a sound stage next to a moon landing.
Yeah. So Team USA,
yeah. So Team USA, they advanced and they were the top seed in that pool. So it's looking good for those.
And we did a pregame show where we talked about Team Sealed out there while you were getting set up here.
Okay.
And one of the questions came up is there a mill deck? And how many Mind Sculpts do you need? And can you play it without the rares?
Right. Actually. That was my segue when they came over to me and I was like, hey, they were just talking about Mind Sculpt. Look at what Brian Kibler's playing, and he didn't have any of those rares. You guys were like,
right? He didn't have the Jace, he didn't have the Sands of Delirium, but he also had a lot of cards though that played really well with. So you see that he was playing Rise from the Grave.
Oh yeah, he definitely had that synergy going, and because I actually stood over and watched along with a lot of other people while Team USA built their team pool, and I saw the synergy, and I was mostly staring at the RBL 16 Forest, but every now and then I glance over there because that deck will change, and the Rise from the Grave is over there. They're like taking creatures out, like, oh, we don't need 8 creatures, 7, 6, 5.
Right. How many creatures did they end up with in that deck?
I think it's 5 to 6.
Let's see. There's an Arcane
I did a pretty quick count, but I think it's only 5 or 6 creatures in that deck.
3. Does Flockbank count as a creature?
Yeah, it counts as a creature.
5, 6, 7. 7 creatures.
That's all you really need.
Yeah.
All right. So that was actually a great round, and we are going to
exciting.
We're going to ship it back to Studio B. So let's see what's going on at the news desk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the news desk. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe, and I am joined by Zach Hill. Hey Zach.
Hey, how you doing, Marshall?
Great. You and I were just out browsing around, checking out some of the decks that we're going to be seeing this weekend, and there's definitely some trends emerging. We're going to be going over a bunch of those. I wanted to get if you have any initial impressions on. I know that since you were the lead developer for this set, you probably have a few things in your head that you might expect to see. You've done a lot of drafts, you've done a lot of sealed. Did it meet what you were expecting to see, or was it a little different?
No, that's a good question. I mean, there's always going to be some surprises. You know, it's not if it panned out exactly like we thought, we should make the game harder. You know, that said, a lot of the stuff that we sort of engineered to be archetypes and limited wound up panning out. We saw a lot of the things we expected. I mean, red-green was a thing. The mono-red goblin deck I saw some people playing. Obviously, everybody saw the mill deck come alive, would just turn to Mind Sculpt you. Yeah.
Nothing quite like the 2-drop of choice Mind Sculpt.
Right, you know, and then all the cards, of course, you expect. I mean, a lot of Vampire Nighthawks running around, a lot of Arms Dealers, a lot of Roaring Primodox. One team I was watching had it going with multiple copies of Bond Beetle or Armor Beetle, whatever it was called.
Is Bond Beetle, and they're just building up their army slowly. Oh, that's pretty
sweet. Giant Crimson Muck Waiter I saw on the table.
Oh, really?
Yeah, some pretty cool stuff going on.
That's sweet. Yeah, I think that a lot of the archetypes, and we're going to go pretty deep on these in a little bit here, but we've seen some of the things that we expected.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's certain color pairs, which we're going to dive into in a bit, that were not surprising. There's a few other ones, though, that I've seen that are a little bit off the radar, so we're going to talk about those, and I think that Team Sealed, it brings this angle that we don't normally get, which is that we've seen a few monocolored decks out there, so we're going to be talking about those as well. But first, we have an update on some of the standings and some of the results that have come in from the first round, and we're going to send it over to the wall with none other than Rich Hagan to give us an update.
Come across to the wall. Hi there, welcome to the video wall. Rich Hagan here with you. We're going to be here all morning bringing you the scores on the doors as they come in to the scorekeeper Nick Fang over on the other side of the hall. Let's start with Pool A. There you see Croatia, the #1 seeds, Gregor Petric-Maritic with his 7-0 record. Then you've got Ukraine, Singapore, Malaysia. In round 1, the 1 seed plays the 3 seed, the 2 plays the 4. So Croatia against Singapore, still waiting for that result. But as you can see, Ukraine, Igor Skripov, Alexander Onosov, and Mike Krasnitsky, they are winners. They have defeated Malaysia, Terry So, and his compatriots. So 19 points go to the Ukraine. Let's move on, see whether we've got anything in Pool 4. Here we go. Taiwan were the #1 seed in this group. They were playing Sweden. No result in yet for this one, but Portugal off to a winning start. They have defeated the Austrians, Thomas Holtzinger, Ben Leitner, Gerald Leitzinger, not off to a winning start. Portugal go to 1-0. Remember, 3 matches they will play. You want to get to 2-1, 3-0 gets you in for sure. 2-1, it all depends on your tie breaks. The seeding is the tie break. So Taiwan only need to be 2-1 to advance to the top 16. What else have we got? Let's see. Pool 6 we've got a result in. Look at that, 1-0. Scotland have the victory over Spain. Joel Califell, that was a clean sweep for the Scots. Andy Morrison, Brad Barkley, Stephen Murray, all won their matches. So Scotland sitting very pretty. They need 1 win out of their remaining 2 matches to be guaranteed a place in the top 16 this afternoon. Let's see if we've got anything else. Pool 8 we can go to. Wow, that's a shocker. Look at that. Puerto Rico, the 24th seed coming in. They have defeated Alexander Hayne, Jamie Blanchette, and Lucas Xiao. And that just does not, that is a real shock. That Canada have lost to Puerto Rico, France and Bolivia still going. So that's the initial updates here at the video wall. We're going to hand you back to Marshall Sutcliffe and Zach Hill, and I'll be back with all the scores as they happen.
All right.
Okay, so we're back.
Rich, really appreciate it.
Hi, Rich. Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about some of these archetypes that we saw. Now, I had a prediction in our pre-show. And I thought that the 3 archetypes and the ones that I would like to have fielded as the strongest were red-green, black-white, and then blue-black, maybe splash.
Makes a lot of sense.
I saw a lot of that floating around out there. Does this surprise you? Was there an archetype that you would put on this list as well? Give me some reactions to that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think green-white is actually one of the premier archetypes. You have a lot of size. Yeah,
okay.
And I've seen a lot of it. I mean, white gives you a lot of the flyers that are traditionally some of green's weakness. Also can just, you have a lot of combat tricks.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got a lot of ways to
Show of Valor.
Right, you have Titanic Growth.
Titanic Growth, which is, man, that card's good.
It's +4/+4 is very large.
It's a ton.
A card, the Battleflight Eagle, I think is very powerful in that archetype. I saw
Specifically
a
in
lot
that
of those
archetype, right? So Battleflight Eagle being, you play it, you get some huge green fatty up in the air, even make him bigger and then bash in.
Oh, I saw a Dustdale Worm take to the skies. I mean, that's a lot of damage.
He normally doesn't even need that much help. Normally he just crashes in there and says, yeah, what are you going to do? But yeah, in this guy,
that usually die.
Should be a game-ending play if you're Battleflight Eagle, you're Dustdale Worm.
No, exactly. So I think that's one of the premier archetypes. I mean, if you can get a monocolor deck, I think those are extremely powerful. Liliana Shade, specifically in mono black, gets very large, very fast.
It's a win condition in and of itself.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure. You can attack for 8-9 points of damage if you make it to the late game.
Right.
And it doesn't take a lot of that to make it over very quick.
Well, what I want to do is I want to start breaking down some of these archetypes. So one other one that I wanted to mention was blue-white.
Yeah, definitely.
That's one that I saw quite a bit out there. I saw green-white, blue-white, and then the three that I mentioned before. You think blue-white's a viable archetype? I mean, it's a kind of a traditional limited archetype. They call it blue-white skies. Does that exist here in M13?
I think it really does. I think some of the most important cards in that archetype, having both Welkin Turn and Avon Squire in the 2 slot, means that deck can start attacking with evasive damage very fast.
Both of those at common, you can pick up a bunch of them.
Right, and then like we saw in some of the feature match coverage yesterday, you also have a lot of ways to shore up the ground. A lot of defensive creatures with 4 toughness. You've got Guardians of Akrasa that helps your flyers attack. You also have That'll Get Entrancer. I mean, he's at 4 mana, but if they're not damaging you and you're damaging them, that's obviously what you want to happen.
It's still a 1/4.
Right.
Yeah, it does what Horned Turtles do.
And of course, Fog Bank in the uncommon slot is extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's the thing. And one of the things that I really like about that as well, there's a pretty nicely scripted curve of Welkin Turn, Windrake, Talrand's Invocation if you're so lucky.
Yeah, of course.
And all of a sudden you have 8 power in the air, and there's a lot of decks that it's just kind of, you can almost ignore what they've done on the ground and just hit them.
Right, and then the white can contribute with cards like Divine Verdict and Pacifism in order to get some of the spiders in the set out of the way. The Deadly Recluses of the world, the Sentinel Spiders.
Those are a big deal for that deck, too.
Yeah, I mean, the Sentinel Spider can actually just shut you down while killing you.
Yes.
So, I mean, you've got to have answers for that. And white, between Exalted to just make your guys large enough to overcome creatures like that.
A Sentinel Spider.
Exactly, and just straight up removal spells. Those colors pair really well together.
That's a really good point, because a traditional blue-white Skies deck would not have access to the ability to get through. If all their guys are 2/2 flyers, maybe 3 power flyers, they're not getting through a Sentinel Spider ever.
No,
they have to find a removal spell for it, or they're just like, yo. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So that's good. All right, so why don't we break these things down? We just broke down blue-white. Let's take a look a little deeper at some of these. Red-green.
Yeah.
I've seen this all over the place out there. This must just be like an archetype that people like to play, that things tend to go together. How much of that do you think is predicated on Flinthoof Boar?
I think it's a lot of it. I was talking to Sam Black earlier, and he said Flinthoof Boar is actually one of the most powerful cards of the cycle.
Yeah.
I would traditionally think it was Arctic Haven, 3 power.
That's the one that caught my eye.
Damage. Right.
When I saw the list on the site, I was like, wow, like Arctic Haven, it instantly caught my eye. And Flinthoof Boar was like, oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, right, that card's fine.
But it turns out it does a lot of work.
Well, yeah, and again, like Sam was saying, you can cast it, it's great on turn 2. It's probably the largest creature that's going to be on the table by that point.
Yeah.
But also just having a 3/3 haste for 3 means that it fits right into the curve wherever you want it, and just almost ensures that you're going to have a powerful, aggressive start.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what the red-green deck wants to do. And it's also just going to have a removal spell to push through its larger creatures. It's cards like Centaur Courser, meaning that you're going to be able to end the game in just a few attacks.
Yeah, it seems to have a really nice balance of big things that can attack through most creatures anyway, and removal to get the stuff out of the way that it can't.
Right.
Okay, so what we've got here is we've got an update back at the wall. We've got more results coming in, and we're going to be throwing it back over here to Richard Hagen. And he's going to give us some updates in just a moment. Rich.
Okay, so here's what we've got. Let's start right at the top, pool 1. we already know that Ukraine have defeated Malaysia. That is Pool 1. Let's head further down, see what else we've got. Pool 3, no results yet, by the way, in Pool 2. That's Slovak Republic, Peru, Poland, Dominican Republic. Those are still going. Now, you already, if you've been watching the coverage, you know that United States beat Brazil. But what a way to do it. That Brian Kibler deck just seems amazing. We talked in the preview about Mind Sculpt. That is just startling. Marshall, we'll talk about that in a minute together, I know. Let's take you on to Pool 4. This time we've got Taiwan, Portugal, Sweden and Austria. Still the one result waiting there. Taiwan against Sweden, they're still tied. Portugal and Austria, you have the win for Portugal. Austria go one down. Let's take you to Pool 5. And this time we've got Argentina. Now we've got a result there. Norway lose out to Slovenia in that one. And the Slovenian team, fair play to them. That's Andrej Dolanc, Maric Penko and Bojan Zunko. They've delivered the goods. They have their first win. Very important as the bottom seed to win your matches, because if you get to 2-1 as the bottom seed, you're going to end up maybe second, maybe third, because you're going to have the losing tiebreak. So if you're paired at 2-1, you're going to end up third, missing out. So good start for Slovenia. They need 2 more to be safely in to the last 16. Let's take you to Pool number 6. We already see Scotland, of course, winning over Spain. Hungary, Switzerland still going at it. I think Hungary have a really good chance to do well here. Thomas Nag was the leader of that team, but boy, do they ever have Tamas Glied to thank for being in day 2. The 3 team members, Nag, the national captain, was 3-4. Gabor Coxis was 4-3. But Tamas Glied, one of a handful of players who was 7-0 on day 1. And that's a big part of the reason Hungary are your number 11 seed and here on day 2 at the World Magic Cup. What about pool number 7? We've got one result still to come in. Uruguay against Jelga Wiegersma and the Netherlands team. Bart Van Etten amongst the team there. Meanwhile, Romania have lost to the Philippines, so the Philippines continue their good run. Andrew Catalano, Gerard Kamanian and Zach Azaki. We said right at the start of the day, Zach Azaki yesterday played up against Vincent Lemoy of Belgium, got a game loss for registering 39 cards. We said that's not a great start for the Philippines, but boy, has it ever improved since then. So the Philippines are underway with a win. That takes us to pool number 8, and we have Canada, as we saw, the shock of the round so far, Canada losing to Puerto Rico. More updates as we have them. Marshall, what strikes your eyes? That USA Brian Kibler deck just struck me as an amazing piece of theatre.
Yeah, that thing's insane, and we're actually going to be talking about that right now because I have to get Zach's take on this deck. So I walked by.
Okay.
You were around, and we were watching USA build, and kind of getting an idea of what they did. Now, I looked over at Kibler, and in front of him, there were 23 green cards.
That's very Brian Kibler.
That's very Brian Kibler. Yeah. If you know him, you're not surprised to see that. There was 3 or 4 Arbor Elves, a lot of ramp. Things were going to get nuts, and I wasn't shocked by that. Now, Luis was building a deck, which he's allowed to do, even though he can't compete directly, he can still build a deck.
That's one of the cool parts of this format.
Which I think is great, by the way. And Luis, of course, being a team player, is in there helping out, doing everything he can. And he's got in front of him a deck with 5 Mind Sculpts in it. And I'm like, oh no, Luis, what are you doing? Thinking this in my head.
Oh, of course.
But I looked at the rest of the shell, and he knows the important pieces for a deck like this.
Yeah, of course.
And he had like a pretty sweet deck built. Now, it was not your normal deck, though. I mean, this thing had some different angles. It had a mutilate. It would look like it was pretty tough to play. Now, when I walked by, I just kind of assumed that the people in front of them were going to play the deck, and Luis was going to give it to one of the other guys. Right. Yeah. I was a little worried about that, because I looked at it and I said, this deck looks really tough to play. Like, this is a skill-intensive, tough deck. Now, no disrespect to the other 2 guys, but you'd rather have that in Luis's hands or Kibler's hands, and they must have agreed because they gave that deck to Kibler.
Yeah, right,
so can you talk us through a little bit of the deck? I don't know how much of it you got to see, but it looks like it's Mind Sculpts, Mutilate, and Neferox.
Well, no, and that's a huge part of it. I mean, it's very tempting to think about these decks like, oh, that's a mill deck. Right.
Yes.
And that's kind of true. I mean, we saw that he could just cast Mind Sculpt, Mind Sculpt, Mind Sculpt, in
he
the
drew
first game.
4 of them, I believe, in a game, and just that's
right,
it.
and that's certainly a way you can win. Right. I mean, no one's going to stop you, but that's only going to happen so frequently. The most important thing to realize is that it really is just a blue control deck.
Okay.
A blue-black control deck. I think the most important card in the deck is actually Mutilate.
Yeah.
Because if what happens, you can eliminate their first wave of threats.
Yes.
Then, like, you don't need 4 Mind Sculpts to end the game. You take away 14 cards out of their library, maybe you entransfer them, maybe you can Archaeomancer one of them back, and they only have a finite number of turns to kill you.
Right.
So you don't have to attack all 40 cards of their library. Their draw step's going to do some of the work for you.
That's right.
And the Mind Sculpts, serve the role of just a way to end the game.
Okay.
Rather than something that, you're trying to do as fast as you can.
Okay, now I have a question, though. What's the weakness to playing a deck like this? Like, somebody can sideboard up to 60 cards if they want. The pools are pretty deep here. Depending on how the sideboards were distributed among the team members, your deck could be a lot bigger and still be pretty solid, I think, like as long as you have the right stuff. Elixir of Immortality exists in this format, and there's going to be, maybe there's one per pool. Somebody has it. You're going to play everybody. They're going to bring it in against you. How worried are you to play a deck that does rely on milling as its end condition? Now, to be fair, this deck does has Neferox and a few other things, so it does have a plan B.
Oh yeah.
But like, how worried are you if you're in Kibler's seat about people sideboarding against you?
I mean, I think that's a reasonable thing to think about. I don't think it's something that you have to be too worried about. I mean, if someone wants to bring in their Battle of Wits deck, more power to them. I mean, as long as you have some number of threats, like that you can actually attack with. I mean, Giant Scorpion is not delivering too many beatdowns.
Right.
But on the other hand, if I'm playing it's an 80-card deck, it might be able to end the game. Also, things like Vedalken and Trancer or things like Sands of Delirium, I mean, you really have to have a lot of cards in your library before that actually becomes good enough to defeat those cards.
To overcome the repetitive.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, Entrancer's hitting you for 3 cards for every one of mine I draw.
Right.
Unless you have, obviously not all the way up to 120 cards, but I mean, you're going to have a lot of cards in your deck for that math to work out in your favor.
And at that point, does your deck just become worse than his anyway?
Oh, exactly, right. Your deck's just bad.
Yeah, your deck's just awful, right?
Like it's really, I mean, we talk a lot up here about
just
strategizing and archetypes and things like that are really sort of sophisticated, but like, you also just want to play a good deck containing good cards.
Yeah, I think that's the baseline of it. Is that you still need to fill that role. Now, if you can go up to 60 cards against a mill deck and still have reasonable card quality, would you?
Maybe. I mean, it depends on how many cards you'd be taking from your teammates, too. I mean, I certainly think that if you just have that many playables, then, like, and you can sacrifice a little bit of card quality to kind of mitigate that, especially if they're trying to just cast Mind Sculpt. So yeah, I mean, I could see playing 52, something like that, cards, but you also don't want to just abyss all of the quality spells from your other 2 teammates. So I think it's I think it's a pretty hard thing to do correctly.
I think each deck gets its own sideboard.
But that's what I'm saying.
Okay, I mean, like, but you don't know you're going to face the Mind Sculpt deck. So I'm saying, like, you sit down against Kibler and he's like, turn 2 Mind Sculpt to you. Does Zach Hill instantly think, I'll probably go up to about 60 cards after this, or are you not even like, because you're taking on significant level of risk by doing that, right?
You absolutely do. I mean, I think this is sort of a cop-out sounding answer, but you have to see what their deck is. I mean, if they have Neferox, I'm not going up to, I want to play my best deck against them.
Yeah.
But if all they're doing is trying to Mind Sculpt me 3 times and hope it's enough, yeah, sure, it's something I'll think about.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. All right, so it looks like we're going to be getting yet another update from our friend Richard Hagan, and he's got a few more things to tell us. So why don't we send it over to Rich right now and find out some info.
Okay, boys, so what we're looking at here is there are only 3 results left to bring in. 3 or 4 of the 16 matches still outstanding. They've gone into extra time, by the way, pretty much at the end of round 1. But let's take a look up at the big board. Croatia were playing Singapore. That's news. Gregor Petric, Maritic, and co. The 3 best players from Croatia all time, delivering the goods again. They now only need 1 win in their next 2 to be guaranteed a place in the final 16. The Ukraine against Malaysia, Ukraine win that. So the top 2 seeds with a winning record after 1 round. That is great news for both of them. They, of course, will have to play each other later in the pod. Let's take you to pool number 2. This time, we've got 1 result still missing. Poland against the Slovak Republic. One of the great highlight standout teams. They pace the field, the Slovak Republic, Tomek Pedrakovsky, Jan Pruchnevich, and Mateusz Kopech for the Poles. We're waiting for their result. But a huge match in this pool was the one between the Dominican Republic and Peru. They were the two minnows in the pod. The winner here will feel they have a chance of making it in. It was the Dominican Republic, the 4th seed. That's critical because they may very well need 3-0. Peru, as a number 2 seed, it's not all lost for them. Yes, they lost this round, but 2 wins, that should still see them through, all things being equal. We wait for all the math to come in. Let's take you to pool number 3. On we go, and the United States over Brazil, as we know. Estonia and Greece, one of the matches still outstanding. Oliver Ox, Hannes Karem amongst the Estonians. Fonas Papadatos, the Greek national champion. Let's take you to pool number 4. And this time, this one is complete. So what do we have? We already knew that Portugal had beaten Austria. New in at this update, Chinese Taipei. Su Qingguo, utterly dominant yesterday. He was 7-0 in individual play. Their good play continues. They have defeated a strong Swedish team that includes Dennis Rashid with his 2 top 8s at Pro Tours this year. Sweden lose, Chinese Taipei win, and by virtue of being the number 1 seed, if they win one of their next 2, Chinese Taipei will be back this afternoon for team constructed play. On we go to pool number 5. What have we got? This one's finished as well. Argentina lose out to Finland. Norway lose out to Slovenia. So it's the 2 bottom seeds this time that have gained an edge. So all that hard work of yesterday, getting a high seeding, well, now they're behind the 8 ball. Argentina and Norway got a lot to fight for. They still have to play each other, remember. Okay, let's move on to pool number 6. The Scots, we knew, had defeated Spain by 3-0, and now we have in Hungary against Switzerland, and here it is Switzerland, and led by Andreas Gantz, Olivier Duport, Jan Blumer. They have defeated Hungary, and that means that Thomas Nag and friends, Thomas Klied, not in a happy place. They will certainly need to win their next 2 matches if they're going to see afternoon play here at the World Magic Cup. Pool number 7, still waiting on Uruguay against the Netherlands. Come on, you slow coaches, we want to know what happens. Philippines defeat Romania. Let's take you to the final pool, pool number 8, and this one is complete. Canada, as we know, lost out to Puerto Rico in a big shock, but France, Rafael Levy. We talked about heavy lifting yesterday, people with a lot of pro points and an inexperienced team around them. Rafael Levy has brought Stefan Subre, Jan Mas, and Johan Dudognon well and truly into the mix. They were the 9th seed coming in. They have won their first round, and now you've got to be worried if you're Canada. You've still got to play Rafael Levy and friends. That is going to be, I think that's the next round. I do believe 1 plays 2 in round 2 of pool play. So that's where we are. Just 3 matches left to bring you. Let's take it back to the desk. And Marshall, Rafael Levy is really starting to deliver for the French team.
This guy is just like a machine. He just keeps churning out victory. You know, the first time I ever did any coverage at all, he won the GP that I did coverage on. So he made a pretty good impression on me right off the bat. The guys, yeah, he certainly came to play. Now, I want to talk about a couple of the decks that we are mentioning.
Sure.
Monocolored decks.
Yeah.
I have 2 questions. The first one is, when you guys were developing the set, you don't consider monocolored, the cards, how they work with the other cards exclusively, right? Like, I can't really think of a situation where M13 all red cards would be a factor for you guys. Is that something that you consider?
It's definitely something that we think about.
Okay.
The reality of most booster draft formats is that you're not going to be able to get 23 cards.
It just never happens.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to do that most of the time. And if you look at just how many cards are in a color versus how many cards are in a draft, mathematically, you know, most people at a table can't do it. It's very hard for more than one person at a table to do it unless something goes really awry.
Yep.
But that said, it's something that does happen. And we obviously, like, because we don't know which cards in a color are going to be going together in an individual deck, but we know that some are, we do try to build those kinds of synergies into a single color. When you open up as many cards as you do in this format, some of those synergies are just going to naturally trend together, and you got to have enough density of them to make it worthwhile to play a monocolored deck.
Okay.
And that's what we've seen a few times in this event so far.
Okay. The other question I have for you. So let's say that you were in this event.
Hypothetical.
hypothetically you were in this event and you were able to run a monocolor deck here in the sealed. Can you talk us through the upsides to that and also the downsides to it, just to give us a feel for, because it just doesn't happen that often, but it does pop up occasionally in limited play that you do get to play a monocolor deck. Can you just talk us through, like, what do you get and what do you lose by doing that?
No, that's a really good point. I mean, one of the big things that you lose is that there's a cycle of extremely powerful, we call them the sedge trolls in development, that require you to have...
That's a good question. That's a good, I like the way that's cool, because you actually have one in there.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly, the red into black. And so obviously you miss out on those specifically if you don't play 2 colors. You can always play a few basic lands of another type, but it's way easier if you have a lot of lands of that type.
And those cards are very good. I mean, those are sought after cards that people want, and that's what you want to be doing.
Right. So you give up on that. I mean, also just your overall card quality tends to be lower just by virtue of the fact that you're drawing from a smaller pool of cards.
Okay.
What you do gain, though, is that correspondingly makes your teammates' decks that much better.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes that can work if you can take advantage of those synergies. And I think, like, plenty of synergies are available to make it worthwhile if you open the right pool.
Okay. Now, a couple of other things. I was thinking, that you just blew my mind, sir. Because I was just thinking more about...
I get that all.
I was thinking about, like, as an individual, you sit down, your deck's more consistent, right? All you care about is amount of lands, right? Like the color, it goes out the door. You know, there's gonna be games during the course of a Magic tournament that you're not gonna get all your colors.
No, that's
you know, you're gonna have to find a way to survive until you do, right? With a monocolor deck, it's just sheerly about the amount. So you're going to gain a lot of consistency over decks that have less consistency, right?
Right.
And then what I was thinking is so you've got the color pie, right? Each color has its own set of strengths and weaknesses.
Of course.
And if you move all in on one of those, you're kind of embracing the weaknesses of that color, right?
That's very true. I mean,
the strengths.
Yeah, exactly. And that is a good point. I mean, mana consistency is always an issue, especially in a tournament like this that's very high stakes. And especially if you feel, you know, if you feel like if you're one of the team captains just have a lot more pro points than most of the competitors of the tournament, you might say, okay, I need to be extra consistent because I just have that much more experience. I'm just, you know, a very talented Magic player.
Sure.
That's why you have, you know, 70 pro points or whatever ridiculous number.
You've shown success, and then it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to err on the side of consistency in that case. But on the other hand, like, I think that is mostly, I mean, a 2-color deck is still pretty consistent.
Yeah.
You have things like Evolving Wilds that can really help you out. I mean, I think you really want to just figure out what are the most powerful spells that you can take advantage of that just do sort of the highest quality things. I mean, it's not as though, I think mana consistency comes up a lot more in formats where you're really trying to get ambitious with your mana base.
Okay.
You know, 3 and 4 colors, kind of off-color splashes for activated abilities, things like that.
You can set yourself apart by being a mono deck that says, I'm not worrying about any of that.
Yeah.
But here, it's 2 colors mainly.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, 2-color decks are just pretty consistent.
Yeah.
You know?
That's definitely true. Now I want to talk about a couple of 2-color decks.
Okay.
Because one of the things that we were mentioning, 2 of the decks that we talked about were blue-black, control, and black-white, aggressive, exalted. And we noticed though that these 2 decks share a color.
That's true.
So they both have black in them, and you might think, well, if both decks have black, how do you decide what to split up? But it turns out that some of the black cards kind of suit themselves for a control deck, and some of them do the other. Can we talk about that a little bit? Just sort of the, you know, the exalted creatures versus like the essence drains and that kind of thing?
No, yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I think one of the cards that really shines in black in the black-white exalted deck is Crippling Blight.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because you don't, okay, they can attack you back. They're not dealing you nearly as much damage as you're dealing them.
Yep.
And sometimes you can kill their guys. You also can't Archaeomancer back a Crippling Blight.
Right.
So I think that card, you know,
can't Augur of Bolus into a Crippling Blight either.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a great really
example.
good in the black-white deck.
Yeah, especially because, you know, Crippling Blight is most effective against the decks that the white-black deck hate.
Exactly.
Right? Fogbank, Giant Scorpion.
Yeah.
Even something like a Scroll Thief is essentially just taken off the board by a Crippling Blight. They can't even chump block with it once, and they have to do a lot of work to get its power back up so that if they ever want to attack with it again.
Right, and like their Wind Drake or whatever, like from the Blue-White Skies deck, like if you crippling blight it, it's dealing you a damage a turn. That's not irrelevant, but it's never going to chump block. I mean, you've turned a really high-pick creature into, you know, a 1/1
for
three that can't block, and you know, you've turned it into a Curse of the Pierced Heart.
Yeah.
Which is not, you know, a fearsome limited giant.
No,
right?
it's not.
So I think you get a lot of utility out of that. Conversely, you brought up Giant Scorpion. I think that's one of the cards that the blue-black control deck really wants.
Exactly.
That's weaker in the black-white strategy. So I think there are definitely like role players. Liliana's Shade is another card that you could pump it to give it size, but Exalted's doing that already.
Exactly.
So, you know, the blue-black deck needs the card advantage, and it needs the body to end games.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think you tend to see that. Now, which deck gets the murder? Because that goes into both, right? Like, I mean, and murder's one of the premium removal spells in the format, so we're not surprised to hear that both decks would want it, but it really does fit nicely into both, right? Like, getting something out of the way so that you can beat down is a big deal, and surviving is also a big deal.
Yeah, you're certainly never going to argue with killing your opponent's best guy. Right. That said, I think it's actually better in the blue-black deck in general for a couple of reasons. I think the first reason is that Archaeomancer gets back murder in blue-black.
There you go.
The second thing is actually, you know, white used to not really be known for the quality of its removal, but white in M13 has Oblivion Ring, Divine Verdict, and Pacifism.
Very solid
Whereas
stuff.
blue is not just killing creatures straight up in almost any capacity. I mean, it can encrust something, which is fine. It can switcheroo something, which is nice and tricky. But I think in general, the blue-black deck is going to need the removal more than the black-white deck.
That makes sense. The double homicide, Archaeomancer. Sorry,
very clever.
I got a little bit of Richard Hagen there. But speaking of Richard Hagen, we're going to be sending it back over to him. He's got more updates for us at the wall.
I certainly do. In fact, I don't have just more updates. I have all of the updates. That's what we have. Round one is in the book. So let me show you up on the big board what's going on. Here we are. This is all that we have. Pool one, Croatia are winners, Ukraine are winners, Singapore and Malaysia with a lot of work to do, especially Malaysia. Pool two, look at this. The Slovak Republic and Poland fought themselves to a standstill. They have a draw, and that means just 3 points for each of them. So even though Peru lost, they're nowhere near in as bad a position as they might have been. Poland and Slovak Republic grounded out, could not find a winner across limited 12 draft packs of M13, could not decide it. So they draw 3 points each. Dominican Republic lead that group alone. What a story. Go Dominican Republic. On we go. Pool number 3. This time we've got United States, and in one of the results we didn't yet have for you, Estonia have beaten Greece to take the advantage. So the top 2 seeds in pole position, Brazil with some work to do, and Greece. On we go to pool number 4. This is where Chinese Taipei. Let's look at pool 4 if we can. That's still pool 3. Have we got pool number 4 coming up? In pool 4, I can tell you that Chinese Taipei, there we are, were winning. Yes, they've won, and Portugal win as well. So again, the top 2 seeds doing well. Sweden and Austria in a bit of trouble, especially Austria, with them being the bottom seed. Remember, the seeds determine the tie breaks. On we go, pool 5. This time the complete reverse. It's the bottom 2 seeds, Finland and Slovenia, that have dominated the opening round of action. Argentina and Norway, they've still got to play each other later in the rounds. So we'll see how that pans out as we move to pool number 6. This is where Scotland, still as top seed, they're 1-0. Hungary missed out. Hungary lost to Switzerland. Andreas Gantz defeating the Hungarian team led by Thomas Glied overnight. On we go to pool number 7. What have we got here? The Philippines and Uruguay are winners. Look at that. Uruguay defeating Jelga Wiegersma and the Netherlands. Roy over amongst the Netherlands team. Couldn't get it done. Uruguay in pole position along with the Philippines. That could be a big shock. Romania were thrilled to make it into day 2, but they've lost their first round. Some work to do if they want the dream to go one stage further into the top 16. And finally, pool number 8. Here we are. It's Canada, as we know, with that shock result of the round. Puerto Rico beating them. France defeat Bolivia, Rafael Levy and co. And that is the story of round 1 here on day 2 of the World Magic Cup. It is time for round 2. It is time for more nation-on-nation action. Let's take you over to the booth. Here comes round 2 of the World Magic Cup 2012.